Chapter 9:14. The reason why Chen Lian could become one of the top genius artifact refiners in Jinling's artifact forging hall was not only due to his extraordinary talent in artifact forging and his family's heritage. Another important reason was that, compared to other artifact refiners, Chen Lian had many more items to practice with. Back then, Lu Ping had discovered a zong or mine within the green sea snake's lair. Chen Lian had dug out the entire zong or mine and refined it into the spiritual material, zong, or bit by bit. It was due to the several years of continuous refining that Chen Lian was able to lay down an extremely solid foundation in the path of artifact forging. After that, Chen Lian entered the artifact forging hall and was accepted as Sage Enigma Flame's disciple. By then, Lu Ping had already begun to manage Huangli Island. The cultivators who had returned from exploring overseas would bring various spiritual materials to Huangli Island to trade. There was no lack of high-quality items among them. Whenever Chen Lian needed those items, Lu Ping and Hu Lili would do everything in their power to obtain them for him. As the other artifact refiners were still hesitating about whether or not they should refine out a high-difficulty magic artifact, Chen Lian had already begun. As the other cultivators were regretting the loss of a great deal of spiritual materials due to a failure in the refinement of a magic treasure, Chen Lian had already destroyed 2 magic treasures. Additionally, he was in the process of refining a third. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the reason why Chen Lian's artifact forging skills could improve so quickly was partly due to his talent, and partly due to the sufficient supply of spiritual materials. Outside the artifact forging hall, when Tianjiang Laozu saw the two of them coming out, he quickly stepped forward and said, "Take it out. Let the old man have a look." Chen Lian turned to look at Lu Ping. Seeing the anxious look on Tianjiang Laozu's face, Lu Ping hastily brought out Landslide. At that moment, the silvery jade-colored print appeared even more solemn and quaint. The pair of ancient characters engraved at the bottom of the print exuded an immeasurable weight. The entire print appeared seamless. From afar, it looked as though a primordial beast was glaring at them. Good. Tianjiang Laozu looked at the spirit-nurturing magic treasure and said good 3 times in a row. Then, he turned to Chen Lian and asked, "Did you really condense the seals on it yourself?" Chen Lian was still a little reserved in front of his grand-teacher, but Lu Ping wasn't so polite. He smiled and said, "Martial Grand Uncle, even if you ask me to condense a treasure, I don't know how to do it myself." The Sky River Patriarch nodded at Chen Lian and smiled. "Not bad. I have a successor." But when Sky River Ancestor returned Landslide to Lu Ping, he suddenly asked, "The purification technique used to upgrade this mystic treasure is yours, right?" Lu Ping was stunned for a moment, but he knew that the old ancestor's eyes were sharp. He smiled and said, "That's right. It's a purification technique I learned before, but I used it on alchemy. This purification technique is extremely brilliant." Tianjiang Laozu took out a storage pouch and the water-controlling flag. It's not easy to repair the water-controlling flag. The difficulty lies in the fact that the water-controlling flag was created with the intention of being a spirit treasure. Therefore, its materials are extremely rare and hard to find. But that's no longer a problem. The storage pouch contains the materials needed to repair it. The biggest problem is that there is a secret technique used in the refining process of the water control flag, which can make the composition of the spiritual materials extremely pure. With the current means of the old man, it is not impossible to make it, but it will take too much time and energy. Now that you have this set of purification secret technique in your hand, cooperate with him again to repair the water control flag. After that, he turned around and left. Lu Ping looked at his back and suddenly noticed that Tianjiang Patriarch seemed to have relaxed, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. However, the Patriarch seemed to have aged even more, and his back view looked unusually bleak. Seeing that the Tianjiang Patriarch had gone far away, Chen Lian suddenly said, "The Tianjiang Patriarch once told me that he only had 2 wishes. The first was to refine a spirit treasure for the sect to pass on to the younger generation. The second was to nurture a weapon-refining grandmaster to inherit the legacy of the weapon-refining hall." Lu Ping laughed. Although Ancestor Tianjiang didn't personally refine a spirit treasure, both the mountain-splitting axe and the wood in Uncle Jiang Tianlin's hands were repaired and modified by ancestor Tianjiang. This can be considered as fulfilling one of his long-cherished wishes. Now that you were able to condense the seventh restriction on the landslide, even though you borrowed my strength, you can barely be considered a master refiner. Ancestor Tianjiang's 2 wishes have been fulfilled. He should be happy for the rest of his life. Chunlian nodded, yet his expression didn't turn for the better in the slightest. Instead, he seemed to be even more serious as he said, "Do you know why Ancestor Tianjiang risked his life to repair the mountain-splitting axe and called me over to assist him?" Without waiting for Lu Ping to answer, Chunlian continued, "It's not only because of his obsession and his long-cherished wish for the path of refining, but also because his lifespan is running out." Looking at Lu Ping's shocked expression, Chunlian continued, "In fact, Grandmaster Ancestor didn't even need my help to repair the mountain-splitting axe. These few years, Grandmaster Ancestor only wanted to pass on his knowledge to me. He hoped that I could become a Grandmaster Artificer in his lifetime, so that when his lifespan comes to an end, there would be someone to inherit the Pavilion of Smithing's legacy and bring it to greater heights." Chunlian said apologetically, "Originally, I didn't have much confidence in making a spirit-nurturing treasure. I needed to slow down and accumulate some experience. However, I also wanted to become a master refiner as soon as possible so that Ancestor Tianjiang can fulfill his long-cherished wish. That's why I had to use Landslide as a test subject." Lu Ping patted Chunlian's shoulder emotionally and said, "There's no need to be so polite between us. Now that Landslide has successfully condensed the 7th enchantment and upgraded it to a spirit-nurturing treasure, you are now a true Grandmaster Craftsman. Senior Marshal Uncle Tianjiang must be very happy. You should be happy." Chunlian smiled bitterly. Lu Ping continued to ask, "Earlier, you said that Ancestor Tianjiang doesn't have much time left in his lifespan?" Chunlian nodded and said in a low voice, "Although Ancestor Tianjiang entered the sect late and did not rank high among the first generation of practitioners, he matured slowly. Actually, his lifespan is second only to Ancestor Tianxiang and Ancestor Tianfan among the 6 Laozu of the first generation. He has long passed the threshold of 800 years old. Ancestor Tianxiang suffered many injuries in his early years and has no hope of entering the mid-Dharma stage. I estimate his lifespan to be around 900 years old." Lu Ping nodded. Only now did he realize that although these younger disciples had their own achievements, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that they had always been under the protection of the first generation of practitioners. That was why they had been able to grow so fearlessly until now. But now, he suddenly realized that this layer of protection had actually been provided for them for a long time, to the point where it was on the verge of collapsing. At that moment, Lu Ping's mood became exceptionally heavy. He even seemed to be a little hesitant, not knowing what to do next. Tianxiang, Tianfan, and Tian Shui Laozu were still fine, but Tian Kong Laozu only had a few decades left in his lifespan. Tianjiang Laozu probably had less than 100 years left. Although Tian Lu Laozu was slightly better off, he had probably passed the threshold of 700 years. Even if he could live 1,000 years, he would only have about 200 years left. Furthermore, although early Dharma adepts had a lifespan of 800 to 1,000 years, that 1,000 years was just an upper limit. Very few early Dharma adepts could actually reach this height. At this moment, Chunlian pulled himself together and said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about these heavy matters. Let's first see how to repair your water-controlling flag. This is the work of the Fei Ling sect's crafting grandmaster, Jiao Yuqiang. Even during the battle of the Fei Ling sect that year, Jiao Yuqiang used this water-controlling flag to defend himself against the combined attacks of 2 to 3 Dharma adepts. If I can repair it, I believe that my crafting skills will improve by leaps and bounds." Lu Ping laughed and said, "Don't you need to rest for a while? Upgrading Landslide has already put so much effort into both of us." Chunlian waved his hand and said, "I know a little about your level of cultivation. With just a few days, how could your inner yuan be depleted? Crafting weapons is not like making pills. You need to strike while the iron is hot." Lu Ping knew that Chunlian was anxious, so he let him be. Fortunately, although the spiritual materials needed to repair the water-controlling flag were extremely rare, there were not many of them. The reason why it had not been repaired in the past few thousand years was because the crafting hall had never mastered an extremely advanced purification technique. In the blink of an eye, another half a year had passed. The battle on Frost Island had gradually escalated. Bloody Mara and the Dharma adepts frequently clashed. Even the Jinling sect was gradually filled with a somber atmosphere due to the increasing number of casualties. At this moment, in Lu Ping's hand, there was a small triangular flag that was only the size of a palm. Layers of black light hung down from the small flag. The damage on the flag had already been repaired. Now, the water-controlling flag was a true spiritual treasure. Qinlian watched from the side as Lu Ping happily played with the water-controlling flag in his hand. He smiled and said, "The crafting of this water-controlling flag is really exquisite. This time, repairing the water-controlling flag will be a great help to my crafting skills." Lu Ping suddenly waved his hand and put away the water-controlling flag. He said seriously, "Do you want to learn the spirit fire-smelting purification technique?" Qinlian's eyes brightened, but then he smiled and said, "This is your trump card, right? Are you really willing to teach me?" Lu Ping chuckled and said, "This spirit fire-smelting purification technique was originally a smithing technique, but I combined it with other alchemy techniques to form a new purification technique. If you can help me forge the ocean bell, I will teach you this secret technique." Qinlian said without thinking, "It's a deal." But then Qinlian said, "You must have some other plans, right?" Lu Ping chuckled and said, "That's right. You still need to forge a sword for me." "Sword? What sword?" Qinlian was confused. Based on his understanding of Lu Ping, this would not be an easy task. But if it was just a flying sword, why was he so serious? A sword that you can only forge after you enter the Dharma stage. Chapter 9:15. Frost Island was still in the hands of the human cultivators. Even though the human cultivators were divided into different camps on Frost Island, Mara had always firmly controlled Frost Island under his continuous attacks. When Lu Ping arrived at Frost Island from the teleportation formation, he felt as if he had returned to the time when Frost Island had just discovered a large spirit stone mine. Cultivators from various sects swarmed over, and the entire Frost Island looked desolate. After so many years of management by the sects of the North Sea, the entire Frost Island had been built with countless beautiful pavilions and towers. Everywhere was covered with ice that shone under the sunlight. But now, when Lu Ping looked around, the entire Frost Island seemed to have returned to the past. The only difference was that the ground was not covered with snow and ice, but ice shards. The ice palaces and ice towers that had been built over decades had all turned into ruins in this battle. Even though Frost Island had not been breached by Mara, the aftershocks of the continuous battles still affected the island. The power of the island's protective formation was all directed to the outside. Without the protection of the formation, the ice sculptures all collapsed in the aftershocks of the battle. Outside the island came the sky-shaking rumbling sounds of spells, divine arts, and artifacts clashing. Lu Ping's divine sense spread out in all directions, and he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. It was said that although Frost Island had been holding its ground all this time, it was still unable to repel Mo Luo's attacks, and it even suffered heavy casualties. The main reason was because the sects on Frost Island were fighting on their own, and they never interacted with each other. It looked like they were absolutely right. At this time, battle cries shook the sky in the northwest direction. Even though there were aftershocks of battles coming from other directions, the intensity of the battles was not on the same level. Lu Ping stepped on a streak of light and arrived at the coast where Jinling was stationed in a moment. He saw that Jinling had sent out 20 to 30 core forging cultivators. They were surrounded by the protective formation of the Mother and Child Traction Formation and were attacking a dozen core forging Mara in the sky outside the island. On the surface of the sea, over 100 blood condensation disciples formed a dozen or so 3 talents 5 elemental Dao soldier formation and fought against a few hundred blood condensation minions. From afar, the battle looked intense. However, from Lu Ping's point of view, it seemed like Jinling was taking the opportunity to let his disciples practice the Dao soldier formation. Although both sides were still fighting to the death, it also seemed like a tacit understanding between Jinling and Mara's clan on the battlefield. Lu Ping didn't care too much. He jumped out of the island's protective array and rushed towards the dozens of core forging realm Big Mara in the sky outside the island's protective array. However, this time, Lu Ping was much more cautious. When his divine sense rushed out of Frost Island, he had already carefully checked the surrounding void. Other than the divine senses that Laozu were familiar with, the Dharma Plane Blood Mara really didn't appear nearby. Lu Ping's sudden appearance not only surprised the dozens of Big Mara in the sky above Frost Island, but also surprised the Jinling cultivators. However, when the Jinling cultivators saw that the person who appeared was Lu Ping, their original reproachful expression instantly turned into joy. Many of the Jinling cultivators who were watching the battle on the island even cheered. At the moment when Lu Ping appeared, 2 blue rainbows shot out from his body. The Autumn Water Sword and the Irin Sword respectively killed 2 Azuras that were equivalent to early core forging cultivators. The 2 Azuras tried to dodge, but the flying spiral chain kill was famous for its speed and difficulty in dodging. It was a famous ambush sword art in the cultivation world, not to mention that they were only Azuras that were equivalent to early and middle core forging cultivators. Of the 2 Azuras, one was beheaded and the other was cut in half. They roared as they fell towards the sea, but Wang Qi immediately followed up and pierced through their skulls. A black ball suddenly exploded next to Lu Ping. A puff of black mist appeared, and countless sounds began to explode in Lu Ping's ears. Then, like needles, they stabbed towards Lu Ping's divine sense. Lu Ping snorted coldly and suddenly turned around to shout at the black mist, "Jia!" The black mist immediately exploded and dissipated like a balloon that had been inflated too much. A mournful roar suddenly sounded in the sky, as if someone was suffering great pain. However, after this roar, not only did the Jinling core forging cultivators in the sky slow down, but even the Jinling Dao soldier formation that was fighting against Mara in the blood condensation realm above the sea was affected. Immediately, a few disciples were injured by Mara. A green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes, and the 2 swords suddenly shot out 1,000 feet to the right. With a twist and a twist, the mournful roar stopped abruptly. Severed limbs and a cloud of blood mist scattered in the air 1,000 feet away, and a head with blood flowing out from all 7 orifices fell into the sea, creating a huge splash. At that moment, a Azura suddenly appeared behind Lu Ping. With a sinister smile, it threw a huge machete at Lu Ping's back. Just as the machete was about to hit Lu Ping's back, the machete seemed to have sunk into layers of sponge. The force contained in the machete was being stripped away layer by layer. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Azura wanted to withdraw the machete and retreat. Unexpectedly, when it pulled back, it found that transparent threads had already wrapped around the machete. The Azura shook with all its might, trying to disintegrate the transparent threads on the surface of the machete. However, the speed at which the threads wrapped around the machete was much faster than the speed at which it disintegrated. At that moment, the Azura realized that the transparent threads were actually tiny water lines. The machete had already been wrapped so tightly that only an outline was left. The Azura's sneak attack happened in the blink of an eye. When Lu Ping turned around, the Azura was so shocked that it did not even have time to withdraw its accompanying machete. It rolled up a gust of wind and was about to retreat. However, Lu Ping suddenly reached out and clenched his fist. The water vapor around him quickly condensed into a huge palm, holding the gust of wind tightly in his hand. The Shura's terrified roar came from the palm. Water splashed out from the palm as the Shura struggled, but it could not break free from the palm's restraint. Lu Ping clenched his fist, and so did the giant water vapor hand. More and more Jinling disciples who came to watch the battle suddenly found that the giant water vapor hand seemed to have shrunk a little. Then, the palm opened, and everyone saw that the wind Azura was covered in water droplets from the inside out. It fell straight down to the surface of the sea. In just a moment, the wind Azura, which was equivalent to a late-stage core forging cultivator, had become a corpse filled with water. The Jinling cultivators watching from below were dumbfounded. In the blink of an eye, 4 large Mara Azuras were killed one after another. The Jinling cultivators watching the battle were filled with excitement, and the Jinling cultivators who participated in the battle were also greatly boosted. On the other hand, the group of Azuras were in chaos. Some continued to charge forward bravely, while others began to flee. The Jinling cultivators took the opportunity to attack and surround the Azuras. However, Lu Ping was hovering in the air and did not attack anymore. Instead, he watched as the cultivators of his sect began to chase and kill the fleeing Mara clan. The Jinling cultivators did not chase very far. Soon, snowflakes exploded in the sky, and the Jinling cultivators returned. Seeing this, Lu Ping also returned to Frost Island. At the same time, Lu Ping also noticed that the aftermath of the battle from the northwest of Frost Island seemed to have stopped. Either Mara had stopped attacking, or Xinling's sect, which was defending the northwest, had repelled Mara's attack. Without exchanging greetings with the many Jinling disciples, Tian Shuelaozu's voice was already roaring in Lu Ping's ears. "Brat, hurry up and get over here." Lu Ping cupped his hands apologetically to his fellow disciples and hurried towards the temporary palace. Although many of the ice sculptures on Frost Island had collapsed, the temporary palace was still the place where the Jinling Laozu rested. Naturally, it would not collapse from the aftermath of the battle. In the temporary palace, the two Laozu, Tian Fan and Tian Shui, took the first seats. Tian Fan Laozu had been operating in the East Sea for more than 20 years. After the crisis on Frost Island, Jiang Tianlin Laozu went to Jingzha Island to replace him. Tian Fan Laozu and Tian Shui Laozu were gathered on Frost Island. This was equivalent to a Dharma adept, and it could be seen how much importance Jinling placed on Frost Island. Under the two Laozu were Gua Tianshan Laozu, Chu Xuanqing Laozu, and Yuan Xinshu Laozu. Jinling had unknowingly set up 5 Dharma adepts on Frost Island. Lu Ping was greatly shocked. He did not know why Jinling would set up such a force in such a secretive manner, but it had never appeared on Frost Island before. Could it be that they had really come for the Spirit Stone Mine on Frost Island? Or perhaps the disaster of Mara this time had really reached such a serious stage. Below them were Spiritual Master Xin Chun and Spiritual Master Xin Sr. Do you know how much blood Mara was paying attention to you at that time? Tian Shuelaozu's face was as cold as frost. When he saw Lu Ping enter the palace, he immediately yelled harshly. Lu Ping knew that his appearance just now had almost ruined something. In reality, he had already realized something after killing 4 Mara in a row. That was why he did not participate in the encirclement against Mara. He hurriedly smiled and said, "This disciple greets Laozu and senior ants." Seeing that no one paid attention to him, he smiled and said, "This disciple had just arrived here and saw that my sect's disciples were fighting against Mara. That was why I lent a helping hand. I did not think that I would attract 3 blood Mara Laozu to watch from the shadows. I am ashamed." At this time, Tian Fan Laozu opened his eyes and said, "There is also a Jade Azura." When Lu Ping heard this, he was shocked and said, "Even a Jade Azura appeared?" Then, he thought of something and looked at the 5 Laozu. He suddenly said, "No wonder 5 Laozu came all at once." Even Senior Antmaster Tian Fan rushed back from the East Sea. Tian Fan Laozu smiled and shook his head, saying, "5? It's 6. When Lu Ping heard this, he was stunned. Before he could carefully ponder what Tian Fan Laozu meant, he heard Tian Shui Laozu say coldly, "Even now, you still think that you are a core forging disciple? 3rd generation minor repairs? You are looking down on yourself too much." Lu Ping didn't say anything. At this time, he could only listen and learn. Otherwise, the furious Tian Shui Laozu would think of other ways to punish Lu Ping. Back then, Jiang Tianlin Laozu and Lu Tianling Laozu had suffered a lot in her hands. Only Tian Qin Laozu was favored by her. Lu Ping knew that he didn't have Tian Qin Laozu's ability. At this time, Gua Tianshan Laozu suddenly said, "Junior nephew Lu has just arrived at Frost Island. Perhaps you don't know the situation yet, so it's hard to avoid mistakes. Although we have exposed a lot of our strength, at least we have forced out a Jade Azura. It can be said that there are gains and losses." Among Jinling's 2nd-generation disciples, other than Tian Qin Laozu, only Tian Shan Laozu, this kind and honest person, had not been trained by Tian Shui Laozu. Tian Shui Laozu still gave him some face and didn't give Lu Ping a hard time. In fact, it was precisely because he realized it that he purposely used his own cultivation as a cover to make Mara suffer a loss. However, he did not expect that Mara was also a spirit of the world and a bloodthirsty demon who was not afraid of death. Previously, it was only due to the fact that both sides were of equal strength and had a tacit understanding during the battle. If Lu Ping really acted presumptuously, these blood demons would naturally not be stingy with their attacks. At that time, the ones who would suffer a loss would most likely be Lu Ping himself and many low-level cultivators who were Zhenling. The Battle of Frost Island became more and more tragic as the stalemate between Mara and the human race became more and more intense. However, because all the sects in the North Sea were sweeping away the snow in front of their door, the human cultivators were unable to accumulate enough strength to fight against Mara. This allowed Mara to choose a place outside of Frost Island to concentrate his advantage and attack at will. The sects that were attacked by Mara were in danger and suffered heavy casualties. At the beginning of the Battle of Frost Island, because Jinling occupied the largest area on Frost Island, the area it defended was naturally also the largest. Therefore, it faced the most sneak attacks from Mara. However, after more than 100 years of accumulation, the second-generation disciples of Jinling were in their prime. The third-generation disciples were already catching up, and even the fourth-generation disciples were beginning to show their talents. The strength of the sect was already something that the other sects in the North Sea could not hope to match. Therefore, Jinling gathered a total of about 100 core forging cultivators on Frost Island in one go. This was almost a third of the total number of core forging cultivators in Jinling. Among these hundreds of core forging cultivators, the second-generation disciples were the elites. Most of them were in the middle and late stages of core forging. The third-generation disciples were the main force. Most of them were in the middle and early stages of core forging. There were also some powerful disciples like Du Feng, Zhang Xianbei, and spiritual master Xuanyu who had entered the late stage of core forging. As for the fourth-generation disciples, they had just matured and were mostly in the first and second levels of core forging. With such a powerful group of cultivators, the 3 talents 5 elements Dao soldier formation, formed by almost 1,000 blood condensation disciples, and the support of the nearby Jade Sword sect, Chongming sect, and Water Mist Pavilion, Zhenling was able to give Mara a powerful counterattack every time he was attacked. As time went by, these Mara gradually realized that there were a few areas on Frost Island that were quite strong. Every time Mara attacked Frost Island, he would suffer heavy casualties. Based on their instincts, these evil Luos had consciously avoided the few areas where the Zhenling sect was the strongest when they attacked the Huangli Island's Grand Formation. Therefore, in the end, even though Zhenling sect's area of defense was the largest, they had suffered the least losses. After Mara chose a place to attack Huangli Island, he would often carry out feint attacks in other areas. This was to prevent the cultivators in these areas from reinforcing the main area. The sect that was attacked would be more than happy to use this excuse to preserve their strength. Or, like Zhenling today, they would seize the time to practice their sect's Dao soldier formation and increase their disciples' combat experience. Helplessly, Lu Ping had no choice but to retract his sharpness and observe the battle between his disciples and Mo Luo with a lofty attitude. He even watched silently as his disciples died in battle, unable to save them in time. Ants. Those below the Dharma stage were ants. This was also why, although the cultivation world divided the various forces into different levels, the minimum qualification was a Dharma stage cultivator, Lao Tzu. If there was no Dharma stage cultivator, even if a force had tens or hundreds of core forging stage cultivators, in the eyes of the cultivation world, it would still be considered a weak force. It was not worthy of being called a noble. What a Dharma stage cultivator could represent was a kind of inheritance. Fortunately, there was still Lu Ping's eldest disciple on Frost Island who was constantly fighting outside. Wang Qi's sword skills had improved by leaps and bounds after advancing to the core forging stage. With Lu Ping's guidance, Wang Qi's improvement was even more solid and reliable. After a long time, Lu Ping realized that Zhenling had never used his full strength during Mara's previous attacks. Even during the early stages of Mara's attack on Frost Island, even though Zhenling had been in an extremely passive position, the Zhenling disciples on Frost Island still used the tactic of taking turns to defend against Mara's attacks. They had never thought of defeating Mara in one go. Ever since he was reprimanded by Tian Fan and Tian Shui, Lu Ping wandered around the Frost Island controlled by Jinling as if he had nothing to do. However, this also made many of Jinling's fourth-generation disciples very excited. Every day, other than Wang Qi coming to learn sword skills and cultivation, there were also many disciples who came because of Lu Ping's reputation. Lu Ping did not reject any of them and gave them advice one by one. In the end, after every battle, Lu Ping even started to comment on the process of the battle from the ice platform. Not only did many fourth-generation disciples come to listen, even the third-generation disciples would lower their statuses and come to listen. There were even many disciples from other sects who came because of Lu Ping's reputation. After all, what Lu Ping was talking about were things that could save one's life. They were real combat experiences and not just empty words. His cultivation base, his position, and everything he had seen and heard meant that he was destined to have insights that far surpassed the others. He was able to make incisive analyses. No one would refuse to live with their own life. This process was also a kind of accumulation of knowledge for Lu Ping. The two great arts that he relied on to cultivate, whether it was 100 rivers flow into the sea or blue sea's mulberry fields, both were a way to gather tens of thousands of arts. Whether it was 10,000 arts returned to one or 10,000 swords returned to origin, they all needed a cultivator's accumulation, and this accumulation came from the present. Amidst the purple mist, the two huge talismans shone brightly. The talismans that had already been formed a long time ago were filled with many more runes, filling up the two talismans even more. It was only at this time that Lu Ping realized that these two most important art talismans were like a framework that had already been built, or a skeleton that had already been erected. They were far from being completed, and there were still countless flesh and blood that needed to be filled in, just like the runes that were continuously being formed. Only after crossing the pass would one know that the pass was not the end. The strange dragon in the Golden Dan had been entrenched in Lu Ping's unbelievably huge 9-vein Golden Dan ever since it was formed, motionless as if it was waiting for the moment to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. However, just as the two runes that revolved around the Golden Dan began to grow more and more plentiful, the giant dragon suddenly seemed to have turned into a Taotai that was looking for delicious food but could not obtain it. The huge body that was originally entrenched began to wander around the Golden Dan, as if it was looking for a loophole in the Golden Dan, so that it could break this cage and rush out from inside. However, how could this 9th-grade Golden Dan be so easily broken? After the giant dragon searched up and down without any results, it really became furious, especially the two magic talismans. The runes inside grew thicker and thicker, like two ripe fruits that were getting closer and closer to the Golden Dan. The attraction towards the strange dragon that was imprisoned in the Golden Dan was also getting stronger and stronger. The delicious food was right in front of it, but it could not be obtained. The increasingly irritable giant dragon finally could not contain its soaring anger and fiercely slammed into the golden cage. Boom! Lu Ping, who was talking incessantly on the ice stage, was suddenly startled. Then, under the puzzled gazes of many cultivators below the stage, he smiled and said, "That's all for today. Everyone, please disperse." After saying that, he directly closed his eyes and did not speak another word. At the same time, all the Laozu on Frost Island felt alarmed. Every one of them seemed to have heard the roar that came from the depths of their divine thoughts, but also from the Dharma figure. At this moment, every Laozu put down what they were doing and extended their gazes and divine thoughts in the direction of Lu Ping. The sound of the Golden Dan was a sign of attaining the Dharma figure. They just didn't know who this person was and what grade of the Golden Dan was. Chapter 9:17. The sound of the golden core drum was a phenomenon that could only occur for practitioners who had reached the 7th grade golden core stage and above before they entered the Dharma stage. The appearance of this phenomenon often indicated the vitality of the Dharma power that was being nurtured in the golden core. Practitioners at the peak of the core forging stage who could produce the sound of the golden core drum had a much higher chance of reaching the Dharma stage than those who had never produced the sound of the golden core drum. Lu Ping's divine will appeared in the core space, and he quickly discovered the changes in the golden core purple aura. The two-fold spells seemed to be deliberately luring the strange dragon, circling around the golden core and constantly provoking the anger of the strange dragon that had been imprisoned by the golden core. And at the edge of the golden core purple aura, the few spells that Lu Ping had condensed seemed to have been pushed to the edge again, as if they had been pushed to the edge by the churning purple aura when the strange dragon had first collided with the barrier of the golden core. At this moment, Lu Ping's divine will sense something again. From a direction that he had not passed through, there were several divine wills that were rushing towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping snorted coldly, and a huge wave of divine will surged out. Very quickly, he set up a huge divine will barrier around himself, covering Lu Ping completely to prevent himself from being disturbed. It seemed that because of the sound of the golden core drum, although these divine wills had sensed that they had already entered the area where Zhenling was, a core forging stage practitioner would not attract too much attention. One of the divine wills, which was obviously an early Dharma adept, unscrupulously crashed into the divine will barrier that Lu Ping had set up. Then, all the divine wills that were trying to penetrate the divine will barrier to find out the identity of the golden core drum cultivator stopped. This was because the scene in front of them made the divine wills of many Dharma adepts shudder. Zhenling's rise was too fast, so fast that all the sects in the North Sea were caught unprepared. Now, another Zhenling's peak core forging stage cultivator was showing signs of a golden core drumming. This was the final sign of attaining the Dharma stage. How could this not make Lao Tzu, the Dharma adepts of the various sects, jealous? Therefore, after realizing that the golden core drum sound cultivator came from Zhenling, many Dharma idol Lao Tzu tried to disturb the Zhenling cultivator through their spiritual sense with hostility. At the very least, they could not let the cultivator smoothly accept the benefits brought by the golden core drum sound. However, this rash early Dharma adept had no idea that he had kicked an iron plate with his foot. When this Dharma adept crashed into Lu Ping's divine will barrier, it was as if he had suddenly plunged into a whirlpool of water. Countless swirling currents instantly caused his divine will to lose all ability to detect anything. However, this Dharma adept's divine will was also very condensed. Very quickly, in this extremely uncomfortable atmosphere, he detected a golden light hidden in the whirlpool of divine will. The Dharma adept was overjoyed. Suppressing the nauseating feeling of dizziness, he crashed into the golden light. However, immediately after that, an extremely tragic howl came from the divine will, scaring all the other divine wills into silence and waiting to see what would happen next. The divine will finally struggled out of the golden light. The few divine wills nearby were instantly shocked. This divine will looked like it had obviously been torn off by someone, and it looked extremely weak. The divine will was filled with hatred, but more than that, it was filled with fear. Seeing this divine will retreat in a panic, the few divine wills nearby hesitated for a moment. However, very quickly, an existence that was obviously stronger than the others had already crashed into Lu Ping once again. A mid-Dharma adept. However, this was different from the previous divine will that had deliberately tried to destroy Lu Ping's purpose of training. When this divine will crashed into Lu Ping, it conveyed a desire to spar. However, it did not wait for Lu Ping's reply before it had already entangled with Lu Ping's divine will. Lu Ping thought for a moment and put away the meteoric poison power shield that he had refined as he pleased. Instead, he took out another item from his storage instrument and prepared to give this person a vicious blow. However, when he thought about how this item had once fiercely offended the Songhai sects Dongji and Dongyi Lao Tzu at the Phantom City auction, and how it could be restored after being corroded by the meteoric poison power shield, this item was far too vicious. Furthermore, it was entangled with a large family in the Central Plains. In the end, Lu Ping finally took it back. Forget it. I'll just fight with you for a while. I'm not necessarily afraid of you. Lu Ping's divine will instantly turned into a deep pool, and the divine will that was challenging him jumped into the pool without hesitation. Both sides were instantly entangled. Although Lu Ping was at a disadvantage in the beginning, he soon managed to fend off the onslaught and slowly rebuilt his defense. Although he defended more than he attacked, Every time he launched an attack, he had no choice but to force the enemy to withdraw their defenses. Both sides actually entered a stalemate in an instant. At this point, even if Lu Ping still did not reveal his identity, the divine wills of the Dharma adepts wandering in the void would definitely know. In the entire Jinling sect, only Lu Xinping would be able to pull off something like this. However, these divine wills did not retreat, especially when they saw that Lu Ping was actually able to fight evenly with Hai Hun Laozu of the Hai Yin sect. This surprised many Laozu and made them look forward to the final result. In the Ice Palace, Tian Shui Laozu's face was full of anger. She said, "This is really outrageous." That Wang Shiqing did not know the inside story and was secretly taken advantage of by Lu Ping. He deserves it. This might be the Tsang Hai sect's intention. Looks like after the matter of Frost Island is over, we really have to teach the Tsang Hai sect a lesson. But where did Hai Hun get the guts to do this? Does he think I don't exist? How dare he treat our sect's disciple like this? Tanqing Laozu said anxiously. Then what should we do? Are we going to let Hai Hun Laozu tangle with martial nephew Lu like this? It seems that although martial nephew Lu has a tight defense, Hai Hun Laozu is also a cultivator of the same generation as the two martial uncles. As time goes on, martial nephew Lu will inevitably be at a disadvantage. Tian Fan Laozu shook his head and said, "The Hai Yin sect doesn't have the guts to hurt our sect's disciple. This is the other sects testing our strength. It is also an unintentional but spontaneous special alliance to contain our sect. The purpose is to see how much strength our sect has hidden on Frost Island. To be more precise, they are coming for me." Before Tian Cheng Laozu could say anything, Tian Fan Laozu had already ordered, "Junior sister, you, martial nephew Tian Shan, and Tian Shu should show our sect's attitude first. If other sects continue to test us, junior brother Tian Chang can just rush up and fight. Just make the situation chaotic." Hearing that, Patriarch Heavenly Snow and Patriarch Tianshan and Patriarch Tianshu nodded. Closing their eyes, they sat down cross-legged within the Ice Palace, not saying anything else. A powerful divine sense surged out from the Ice Palace, causing a whistling sound to ring through the world. Tianqing Laozu looked at Tian Fan Laozu with a puzzled look and said, "Martial uncle, when I go out and fight, if I cause a divine sense battle, what should we do?" The fan in Tian Fan Laozu's hand opened with a swoosh sound, and the air in the entire Ice Palace seemed to start moving. He said, "Then we might have to teach these people a lesson." The battle between Lu Ping and Hai Hun Laozu had definitely shocked all the Dharma adepts watching, including the few Dharma adepts from Jinling's own family. It was true that Lu Ping's strength was comparable to an early Dharma adept, but when they saw that Lu Ping's divine sense could even compete with a mid-Dharma adept, Lu Ping's behavior of challenging the limits of the Dharma adepts of the North Sea was enough to make many Dharma adepts have dark thoughts. Two Dharma adepts' divine senses rushed out from the spectating divine senses, actually trying to attack Lu Ping together with Hai Hun Laozu. Just as the two divine senses were about to clash with Lu Ping's and Hai Hun Laozu's divine senses, three divine senses pressed down on the battlefield. It was true that Tian Shui and Tian Shu Laozu were not the only ones in Jinling. Gua Tianshan had actually arrived at some point in time. A few of the divine senses saw the aggressive Jinling adepts and quickly retreated. However, many divine senses were still patrolling the area. The two divine senses that suddenly interfered were initially aiming to heavily injure Lu Ping. However, when they sensed the arrival of Tian Shui Laozu, Tian Shan, and Tian Shu Laozu, it was obvious that they had the intention to retreat. In reality, when these two divine senses interfered in the battle between Lu Ping and Hai Hun Laozu already had the intention to retreat. However, because the battle of divine senses was not ordinary, it was not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. Otherwise, he would have to give up part of his divine senses when he retreated. And these two divine senses obviously did not want Hai Hun Laozu to retreat just like that. Hence, in an instant, the situation of 3 against 1 really began to play out in front of Tian Shui Laozu and the other two. Tian Shui Laozu's divine sense was immediately displayed by many cultivators' divine senses. Everyone could imagine how furious Tian Shui Laozu was right now. However, the The three of them did not dare to participate in the battle of divine senses between Lu Ping and Hai Hun Laozu. The entanglement of divine senses was actually far more dangerous than a battle of techniques. If Tian Shuelaozu and the others were to hastily join in, not only would they lose the deterrence of Laozu's divine senses, it would also cause Lu Ping to face an even more dangerous situation. Of course, more importantly, because of the three of them joining in, it caused Lu Ping's divine sense to be on the brink of collapse. However, now, even though Lu Ping appeared to be on the brink of collapse, he was like an unkillable cockroach, lingering on the brink of collapse without falling. On the contrary, including Hai Hun Laozu, the three divine senses were getting more and more fearful. Only when they personally fought with Lu Ping's divine sense did they realize the tenacity and condensation hidden within Lu Ping's divine sense. This kind of divine sense was able to increase so quickly, yet it did not affect his cultivation at all. Just thinking about it, the three of them felt that it was inconceivable. Hai Hun Laozu's divine sense finally broke free from the entanglement between the four of them. He did not even bid farewell to Tian Shuelaozu and the others' divine senses before hurriedly retreating. Fortunately, although Hai Hun Laozu's battle with Lu Ping was domineering, he did not lose the demeanor of an elder. Moreover, when the two divine senses attacked, he also maintained sufficient vigilance and did not take the opportunity to hit them when they were down. Therefore, although Tian Shuelaozu was extremely angry, she did not stop Hai Hun Laozu's divine sense from leaving. Without Hai Hun Laozu's entanglement, the two early Dharma adepts' divine senses that were fighting with Lu Ping's divine sense were instantly thrown into chaos. They wanted to retreat, but they were afraid that Tian Shuelaozu and the others would intercept them midway. Thus, they could only brace themselves and continue to fight with Lu Ping. At this moment, the news of an enemy attack suddenly came from Frost Island. The entire Frost Island was immediately put on lockdown, and all the Dharma adepts' divine senses began to withdraw. Lu Ping ultimately still considered the bigger picture and did not make things difficult for the two of them. Gradually, he began to take a defensive stance. The two divine senses immediately felt as if they had been pardoned and quickly retreated back to their respective areas. As for Tian Shuelaozu, although she was extremely unwilling, she was after all the first-generation Dharma adept of the North Sea, Laozu. She understood the importance of the matter and did not purposely make things difficult for them. However, just as the two divine senses were secretly delighted and were about to retreat, a scorching hot divine sense suddenly attacked with unparalleled anger. The scorching pain instantly burned a part of the two Laozu's divine senses into ashes. On the other side of Frost Island, dozens of miles away, two miserable cries came one after another. Lu Ping kept the small banner in his hand. His pale face showed that Lu Ping was currently in a very bad state. However, when he opened his eyes, a flash of joy flashed in his eyes, but it was hard to tell what he was thinking. At this moment, Lu Ping had already sensed that the divine senses of Tian Shuelaozu and the others had already left. Lu Ping's heart suddenly jumped. Only then did he realize that this time, Mara's attack was no small matter. Otherwise, it would not have attracted the attention of all the Dharma adepts at once. Could it be that this time, it would be another all-out attack by the Mara clan? Lu Ping hurriedly stood up. However, the dizziness in his head caused Lu Ping to almost fall down again. With great difficulty, he used the inner yuan in his body to stabilize his staggering body. Within the golden elixir, the dispirited strange dragon opened its huge mouth and sucked in fiercely. The Danxia purple qi in the core space quickly circulated and gathered towards the golden elixir. Then, it seeped into the golden elixir, as if it was swallowed by the strange dragon. With the nourishment and recovery of the inner yuan, although Lu Ping's divine sense was unable to completely recover in a short period of time, at least his pale face had a tinge of red. He was able to control his inner yuan and use flying techniques. After entering the Ice Palace, only then did Lu Ping realize that the few Laozus seemed to have disappeared. Lu Ping also knew that every time Jinling and Mara fought, one or more of the few Laozus would be hidden at the side. One reason was to secretly protect their own disciples, and the other was to monitor Mara's side. However, The auras of the few Laozus in the Ice Palace had already disappeared. Obviously, they had all arrived near the coast of Frost Island. This also meant that this time, Mara's momentum was fierce. He was probably going to launch an all-out attack on the entire Frost Island, and the situation was extremely bad. At this time, Lu Ping couldn't care too much about this. Without the support of abundant soul power, Lu Ping could only use half of his strength. Randomly finding a secret room, Lu Ping lit a piece of soul-calming incense that hadn't completely burned out. Then, he stuffed a soul-returning pill made from the soul-devouring crystal of a great devil cultivator into his mouth. A small banner slowly rose from behind Lu Ping, and a strange ripple immediately started reverberating in the secret room. Chapter 9:18. Gua Tianshan Laozu looked worriedly at Mara's army that had almost completely covered the sea in front of them. Tian Shu Laozu suddenly appeared beside Gua Tianshan and said, "Junior brother Gua, did you find out how many blood Mara are hiding among them?" Gua Tianshan Laozu's expression was rather ugly as he said, "I only found traces of an ice Shura. But senior brother, did you notice that the number of demonic cultivators in Mara's army is much lower than before?" Tian Shu Laozu looked at the approaching Mara's army and could not help but look ugly as well. He said, "If that's the case, could it be that Mara is also plotting something? But I did find traces of a wood elemental blood Shura just now. That's quite rare." Gua Tianshan Laozu's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He said, "Could it be that one of the Shura's lairs is on an island covered with forests? To be able to raise a wood elemental Shura to the Dharma plane, the island where the lairs are located must be very large." A wave of heat swept past. Gua Tianshan Laozu and Tian Shu Laozu looked behind them. Tian Cheng Laozu just happened to appear in front of them and said, "Two water, one wind, one wood, for blood Shuras. Other than that, there's also a hidden blood demon. It's a setup to counter the strength of our sect that was exposed on Frost Island. This Mara has become AF * King Demon." Although Ancestor Tianqing practiced a cultivation method of the fire property, he had learned a secret skill after he was ambushed by the Demon Clan and almost lost his life. This kind of detection secret skill was very effective in cracking the divine sense of concealment of practitioners at the same level. Although the All-Devil Clan was also proficient in the secret skill of concealment, Ancestor Tianqing was still very sure that he could detect the traces of their activities. Tian Shu Laozu was a meticulous person. He carefully pondered the results of Tianqing Laozu's investigation and said, "I'm afraid it's not that simple. These blood Mara are only targeting the three of us, Senior Aunt Tian Shui and Junior Nephew Lu. Senior Aunt Tian Shui can handle 2 blood Mara each, and we can handle 1 each. However, there are 2 problems." Tianqing Laozu did not understand immediately and said, "What problems?" Tian Shu Laozu sighed and said, "The first problem is that in a one-on-one situation, the few of us will not be able to handle a blood Mara who has a primordial spiritual treasure." Tian Shu Laozu paused and said, "At least the old man will not be a match for any blood Mara." Tianqing Laozu's face turned a little ugly. It was not because of Tian Shu Laozu, but because even though he was stronger than Tian Shu Laozu, he might not be a match for a blood demon or a blood Shura. Gua Tianshan Laozu thought for a while and said, "With junior sister Xuanqin's guiding formation, it's not impossible. The old man thinks he can handle a blood Shura." Gua Tianshan Laozu's own strength was not bad, and he had also practiced an earth-based technique that was good at defense. If he only defended and did not attack, even a mid-Dharma adept might not be able to break through his defense. As for junior nephew Lu, this kid has too many tricks up his sleeves. We don't have to worry about him. The old man has more confidence in him than he does in himself. Tianqing Laozu snorted twice and said in an annoyed tone, "It's just that junior nephew Lu will need some time to recover from the chaotic battle of wills just now." Tian Shu Laozu was still a little worried. Gua Tianshan Laozu said, "Let's wait for him for a while. Junior nephew Lu is not someone who does not see the big picture. Moreover, blood Mara will not fight immediately, so we can drag it out." Tianqing Laozu said nonchalantly, "Senior Uncle Tianfan has not been exposed yet. Once Senior Uncle Tianfan and the Wind and Snow Immortals work together, they can even handle a Jade Shura. Tian Shu Laozu said helplessly, "This is the second thing I wanted to talk about." That day, Senior Uncle Tianfan found a Jade Shura. Once it appears, no one on Frost Island other than Master and Senior Uncle Tian Shui will be able to stop it. Once the two of them work together to fight the Jade Shura, we will not be able to stop the Blood Mara even with the power of the formation. Tian Shu Laozu's words stunned Tian Shan and Tian Cheng Laozu for a moment. They had really forgotten about these things. Tian Cheng Laozu's expression did not look good either. He said, "Then what should we do? Ask for help from the sect, or warn the other sects? Maybe this time. It's just that the number of Mara stationed here is a little more, and the other sects do not have this much pressure." Tian Shan Laozu signaled Tian Cheng Laozu to stay calm, but he still said, "This time, if we want to defend Frost Island, we must ask for reinforcements from other sections. Don't forget me, when Hai Hun Laozu and junior nephew Lu were fighting, there were two Dharma adepts from the Central Plains who were injured by junior brother Tiancheng. Their strength will definitely decrease. But don't worry, Senior Uncle Tianfan and Senior Uncle Tian Shui must have noticed the abnormality, and they probably have a plan to deal with it." Only now did Tiancheng Laozu and Tian Shu Laozu realize that Tianfan and Tian Shui Laozu had not appeared since the beginning. In the secret room, Lu Ping suddenly opened his eyes. The space in front of him rippled, and a palm-sized hole appeared in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping reached his palm into the hole and took out a jade scroll. The hole in the space instantly distorted after being stirred by Lu Ping. Then, it disappeared completely, leaving only ripples in the space that spread in all directions. Lu Ping's divine consciousness swept through the jade scroll, and his eyebrows furrowed tightly. After thinking for a while, Lu Ping took out a sound transmission sword and said something into it. Then, the sound transmission sword flew out of the secret room. Lu Ping thought for a while and waved his hand. The artifact spirit Ruyu walked out of the space door of the Golden House and bowed to Lu Ping. "Ruyu greets Master." Lu Ping asked, "Ruyu, this is the Frost Island in the north of the North Sea. Can you sense anything here?" Ruyu shook her head and said, "Master." Ruyu did not find any trace of the ship. However, Ruyu has an impression of this Frost Island. Unfortunately, time has passed. In order to preserve my spirituality, Ruyu had to give up this memory. Lu Ping's eyes immediately brightened. Although Ruyu did not find any trace of the ship, she clearly showed a sense of familiarity with the Frost Island. This made Lu Ping believe that the ship of Fei Ling's sect must have passed by the sea near the Frost Island. The sea where the Frost Island was located was in the north of the North Sea, and Fei Ling Mountain was to the south and east of the Frost Island. Then, the sea where the ship disappeared was most likely deep in the southern part of the Frost Island. Lu Ping had a rough idea of what to do. He said again, "Fine, call Little Hai and Degui out first." Wang Qi and a group of Jinling core forging cultivators were nervously looking at the Mara group coming over from the sea. The power that the Mara family had displayed in front of Jinling caused the entire Jinling core forging cultivators to feel an oppressive atmosphere. At this time, a sound transmission sword suddenly cut through the air. Wang Qi felt the scabbard on his waist that was specially used to receive sound transmission swords vibrate. He raised his hand, and the sword immediately fell into his hand. Wang Qi scanned with his divine sense and hurriedly turned to a middle-stage core forging cultivator who was obviously a third-generation disciple. He said, "Marshal Uncle Xianliang, teacher has sent a message for this disciple to go over. Please allow me." Who was Wang Qi's teacher? Even though Taoist Master Xianliang did not want Wang Qi to leave, his team of 8 core forging cultivators could form a complete small 3 talents 5 elements Dao soldier formation. With Taoist Master Xianliang's cultivation at the 4th level of core forging, he could use this Dao soldier formation to fight against a late-stage or even peak core forging cultivator with the strength of 7 early-stage core forging cultivators. Although Wang Qi's cultivation was not the highest among the 8, his strength was not weak. Normal 3rd-level core forging cultivators would have to retreat in front of Wang Qi's sharp sword skills. Even Taoist Master Xianliang felt his heart palpitate when facing Wang Qi's sword skills. Once Wang Qi left, the Dao soldier formation could still be used, but its power would be greatly reduced. However, Taoist Master Xianliang did not have the guts to not let Wang Qi go. Although Taoist Master Xianliang was also a third-generation disciple and had some fame among them, he was promoted to an inner disciple at the same time as Qianlian. However, Taoist Master Xianliang's status was far lower than Qianlian's. Moreover, Qianlian was now a weapon-forging grandmaster, which was no weaker than a Dharma adept. As for Lu Ping's status, it was even lower. Taoist Master Xianliang said helplessly, "Mara is approaching the warning zone. He will be fighting soon. Go and come back quickly." As soon as Wang Qi left, one of the cultivators in Taoist Master Xianliang's team said angrily, "What's so great about him? He just has a good teacher." Another cultivator laughed coldly. "So what if he has a good teacher? At least he can save his disciple at this critical moment. Can your teachers do that?" Another cultivator said, "Xin Gang, Xin Tai, don't talk nonsense." The cultivator called Xin Tai retorted, "How is this nonsense?" Taoist Master Xianliang called his eldest disciple away at this critical moment to avoid the upcoming battle. Taoist Xianliang knew that Xin Gang and Xin Tai were the disciples of Grand Ancestor Tian Shu. Almost everyone in Jinling's sect knew that Grand Ancestor Tian Shu and Grand Ancestor Tianling didn't get along. So, it was not surprising that Xin Gang and Xin Tai didn't have a good impression of Wang Qi, who came from Chonghua Manor. Although Taoist Master Xianliang was unhappy that Lu Xinping called Wang Qi away, he did not want the two brothers to talk nonsense and destroy the morale of the army. Thus, he said sternly, "Both of you, shut up." As soon as he said that, a tiger's roar came from the island. Many of the blood condensation disciples on the island felt dizzy and ringing in their ears. They quickly covered their ears. Where did the tiger's roar come from? Chapter 9:19. Lu Ping slapped the 3-meter-long and 5-meter-tall tiger, causing it to tumble. He scolded, "Shut up." Lu Xiaohai finally got out of the golden house, which wasn't small, but looked narrow in Lu Xiaohai's eyes. He was in a great mood and couldn't help but roar. However, Lu Ping slapped him right on the head. Lu Xiaohu's domineering aura of a tiger suddenly became domineering. He lay on the ground and covered his eyes with his 2 tiger paws. He didn't look like the spirit of the tiger demon clan in the past. Instead, he looked like a frightened giant cat. Lu Dagui slowly crawled out of the golden house. Lu Ping handed an escape talisman to Wang Qi and said, "You are my eldest disciple, the second disciple of Jinling's current leader, Lu Tianling, Lao Zu. You have no reason to retreat from the Battle of Frost Island. Only after a bloody battle can you fully understand the responsibilities of a disciple of Jinling." Lu Ping paused and said, "I don't need you to understand this now. However, I won't let you die in vain in this battle. You must have heard of this escape talisman. Take it and use it well. As for Lu Xiaohai and Lu Dagui, one of them can attack and the other can defend. They can support you. With the 3 of you working together, I think even a middle-stage core forging cultivator can't do anything to you." Tian Shan Laozu and the other 2 were also shocked by the sudden tiger roar. They knew where the tiger roar came from. Tian Shan Laozu asked, "What is this kid doing? How did he catch a tiger demon and bring it to Frost Island?" The ancestor of Tian Shan said, "I'm afraid it's not an ordinary tiger demon. Although this roar sounds weak, it has a momentum of looking down on the world. I'm afraid it's not the authentic lineal bloodline of Taoist Hu." Tianshu Laozu said with a dark face, "This martial nephew Lu has always been bold and talented, but he is too reckless. If we really capture Taoist Hu's lineal descendant and make him our pet with intelligence, won't we make a strong enemy for our sect?" Tian Shan Laozu knew about the conflict between Tianshu Laozu and Lu Ping, but Tianshu Laozu's words made sense, so he didn't say much. On the other hand, Laozu Tianqing said, "That kid is as cunning as a ghost. When has he ever been taken advantage of? Senior martial brother Tianshu, don't worry." Tianshu Laozu's expression darkened, but he did not say anything more. He raised his head and saw a ray of light flying towards the Jinling Tao soldier formation that was gathering at the coast. Wang Qi didn't know that he had been noticed by a Dharma manifestation Laozu when he returned to spiritual master Xianliang's Tao soldier formation. Right now, he was completely immersed in the secret art that Lu Ping had just taught him. This secret art was a secret art that Lu Ping had gotten from spirit beast taming sect Sangyu. Sangyu saw that Lu Ping had many spirit pets with extraordinary potential and achievements. She saw that Lu Ping was only using them roughly and exclaimed that it was a waste. That was why she taught this secret art to Lu Ping. This secret art was obtained by spirit beast taming sect from a senior cultivator and could not be considered a direct disciple of the spirit beast taming sect. However, this secret art itself was an incredible existence among the secret arts collected by the spirit beast taming sect. Wang Qi's return caused Xian Gang and Xian Tai's expressions to darken, but spiritual master Xian Liang also heaved a sigh of relief. Perfected Xian Liang knew that the Dao soldier formation team he was leading was about to face a fierce battle. Not only did Wang Qi's return make the Dao soldier formation complete, but it also increased the chances of everyone surviving the battle. Spiritual master Xian Liang was also a person with a clear mind. When he saw that Wang Qi was not transferred away from Frost Island by Lu Ping, he admired Lu Ping's righteousness. At the same time, he immediately realized that Wang Qi must have received some benefits from Lu Ping. With Lu Ping's treasure boy skills, this life-saving benefit might not even be comparable to spiritual master Xian Liang's trump card. At that time, spiritual master Xian Liang might have to be more careful. Perhaps, he might even be able to save his own life. Just as spiritual master Xian Liang was about to ask Wang Qi something, a deep voice suddenly sounded, "Disciples of Jinling, go out and meet the enemy." Spiritual master Xian Liang suddenly raised his head and realized that Mara's army had already approached 5 kilometers away from Frost Island. On the wide coastline that Jinling was guarding, there were 12 blood condensation realm cultivators forming a Tao soldier formation. Each Tao soldier formation consisted of about 80 people. There were also 12 Dao soldier formations consisting of 8 core forging realm cultivators. Other than these, there were more than 10 late core forging realm cultivators following behind these Dao soldier formations. Some were in groups of 3 to 5, while others were alone. After exiting the island's protective formation, they charged towards Mara's army. Tian Shan, Tian Cheng, and Tian Shu patriarchs watched as the two opposing torrents crashed into each other. The earth-shattering battle cries even overshadowed the roars of magic spells and magic treasures. Jinling's side had the advantage of the Dao soldier formation. At the beginning of the battle, the two sides had similar cultivation levels. Jinling's Dao soldier formation was able to suppress the surging Mara's army. However, Mara's army had the advantage in numbers. Once the cultivators in the Dao soldier formation were killed or injured after paying the price of tens of little Mara's lives, then the entire Dao soldier formation would have to change its operation. At the same time, the power of the Dao soldier formation would have to be weakened. Tian Shan Laozu watched as more and more of Jinling's disciples died. He couldn't help but show a look of regret. I wonder how many Dharma adepts among these fallen disciples would become in the future if they were still alive. Tian Cheng Laozu cursed. If it wasn't for the fact that there's always blood Mara's aura nearby, I really want to go out and fight and kill those Maras. Tian Shu Laozu looked at the regretful expression on Tian Shan Laozu's face with disdain. He thought to himself, if Lu Tianling was here, no matter how regretful he was, he would still have a calm expression on his face. At this critical juncture of life and death, this kind of emotionless and calm expression can make people feel like they are the backbone of the sect. This is probably one of the reasons why Gua Tianshan is still not as good as Lu Tianling. But then again, if it wasn't for Gua Tianshan's benevolence towards the sect's disciples, Tian Shu wouldn't have been able to push down Lu Xianling, who was in charge of the sect's deacon at that time, and replace her with Gua Xianshan. Among the highly respected second-generation disciples of Jinling, Lu Tianling had a strict personality, and he did things swiftly and decisively. He was the most respected by the Jinling disciples. Jiang Tianlin Laozu had a dignified appearance, and he had the highest level of cultivation, so he was the most respected by the Jinling disciples. Gua Tianshan Laozu was honest, easygoing, and fair, so he was the most respected by the Jinling disciples. Mei Tianqin Laozu was shrewd, and he was the most respected by the Jinling disciples. The difference was that Zhenren Li Xuanin's killing methods were dark, but Tian Shu Laozu's methods were sinister. The overwhelming Mara army crashed into the Dao soldier formation, formed by the 12 teams of blood condensation disciples like waves. The formation was like 12 huge reefs on the shore, smashing wave after wave of Maras into pieces. However, the 12 huge reefs were also loosening under the constant attacks of the waves, and they were even moving back towards the shore. In the sky, the Dao soldier formation formed by the 12 teams of core forging cultivators also met with a group of core forging Great Mara, and both sides also began to fight fiercely. At the same time, there were more than a dozen late-stage core forging Jinling cultivators, including Du Feng and the others. The Dao soldier formation led by Jinren Xianliang was not very lucky. As soon as they arrived, they encountered a fierce attack from a water Azura that was equivalent to a late-stage core forging Great Azura. Jinren Xianliang tried his best to circulate the Dao soldier formation to block the Great Azura's attack, but he was only able to defend himself. The formation itself was in a state of suppression. Just as Zhenren Xianliang was wondering if he needed the help of his sect's late-stage core forging cultivators to temporarily get out of this predicament, he saw the Great Azura thrusting its spear at him again. Zhenren Xianliang hurriedly circulated the formation. The Three Talents formation blocked the attack head-on, and the Five Elements formation weakened the attack from the side. Unexpectedly, this time, when everyone gathered their strength, they suddenly felt that their hands were empty. The Great Azura's strength was 1/3 less than before. Perfected Xianliang was invigorated. His spiritual force immediately checked the Dao soldier formation that he was already familiar with. He immediately discovered that the person who blocked the Great Azura's spear was Wang Qi, who was in the heaven's origin position of the Three Talents formation. The Great Azura thrusted its spear again. This time, it was the Five Elements formation's turn to block the attack head-on, and the Three Talents formation's turn to weaken the attack from the side. However, because the impact of the Great Azura's previous attack had obviously decreased, the Mysterious Steel and Mysterious Iron brothers, who were blocking the Great Azura's attack head-on, were not as prepared as before. Zhenren Xianliang secretly cursed. Just as he opened his mouth to warn them, the Water Azura's spear had already hit the Mysterious Steel and Mysterious Iron brothers, who were good at defense. Amidst their horrified expressions, they spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. Looking at the Water Azura, who was about to seize the opportunity to attack, the 2 brothers could not help but reveal despair on their faces. Once the Mysterious Steel and Mysterious Iron brothers died, the Dao soldier formation that Zhenren Xianliang commanded would definitely be greatly weakened. It would not take long for the Dao soldier formation to fall apart. Without the cooperation of the Dao soldier formation, how long could the few early-stage core forging cultivators last under the attack of Mara's tide, even with the protection of the mother and child traction formation? Apart from Zhenren Xianliang and Wang Qi, who had a life-saving item given by their teacher, the rest would probably not be able to escape misfortune. The 2 brothers did not know why, but at the moment of death, they actually looked in Wang Qi's direction at the same time. However, their gazes just happened to see a scene that made them feel complicated. Wang Qi took out his top-notch psychic magic treasure, which many cultivators of the same level envied, and slashed horizontally. A sword light whistled out and actually headed straight for the Azura's spear that was thrusting towards the 2 brothers. He was just an early-stage core forging cultivator. Even if his strength was usually higher than cultivators of the same level, where did he get the courage to challenge the Great Azura, who was equivalent to a 9th-stage core forging cultivator, or even a peak-stage core forging cultivator? He was really overestimating his own strength. Disbelief, shame, and mockery were the final feelings that the Mysterious Steel and Mysterious Iron brothers felt at the moment of life and death. Chapter 920. In front of Lu Ping, there was a small flag revolving around him. Although Lu Ping was sitting on the ground motionlessly, his mind was focused on the small flag. To be more precise, Lu Ping's divine will was focused on the few mysterious runes on the small flag. Ever since Lu Ping had advanced to the core forging stage, he had obtained this mysterious small flag from Zhenling's Heaven's Inheritance Cave. Although he knew that this small flag would be of great help to Lu Ping's divine will, and Lu Ping had suspected that there might be other secrets to this small flag, Lu Ping's level at that time had not been able to discover any clues. Hence, as time passed, Lu Ping's curiosity gradually faded. However, this small flag was still an extremely rare divine will treasure in the world of cultivation. Although it only had one function and was weak, it was still very valuable in the world of cultivation. This situation continued as Lu Ping's level of cultivation increased to the peak of the core forging stage, and his divine will was already comparable to that of a mid-Dharma adept. However, he still could not discover any other secrets of this small flag. It was only after the discovery of the vast sea relics that the vast sea bell had been rung twice by Dongi Laozu and Demon King Kong Jing. At first, Lu Ping was caught off guard and almost suffered a loss. However, when the bell rang for the second time, Lu Ping, who was on guard, discovered that the originally ordinary surface of the small flag had a few mysterious runes that Lu Ping had never seen before. And it was precisely because of the appearance of these runes that Lu Ping was able to easily block the attack of the vast sea bell when the bell rang for the second time. At this time, Lu Ping was naturally very interested in the small flag's changes. The few runes that were revealed were obviously not all of the small flag's secrets. However, after a period of time, although Lu Ping tried his best to unravel the secrets of these runes, and at the same time hoped to discover more of the small flag's secrets, there was no progress. However, this also allowed Lu Ping to discover that this small flag not only helped in the use of divine will, but it was also extremely beneficial in the expansion of divine will and in defense. This was until Lu Ping had consecutively fought with 4 Dharma adepts, one of whom was even a mid-Dharma adept. This caused Lu Ping to have no choice but to rely on the small flag's help. At this time, Lu Ping discovered that the small flag once again had a few other runes. The existence of these runes not only made it easier for Lu Ping to use his own divine will, but it also helped Lu Ping's divine will to defend against the attacks of the other Dharma adepts. It was also because of the small flag's changes that Lu Ping was able to severely injure a Dharma adept with a single blow. This was also why Lu Ping was able to remain unscathed under the divine will attacks of a mid-Dharma adept and 2 early Dharma adepts. After the appearance of the vast sea bell, it was not that Lu Ping had not thought about whether the small flag in his hand was one of the 3 treasures of the vast sea. It was just that the power that the small flag currently displayed could not be compared to that of a spirit treasure. Secondly, the cloud sail was said to have been lost in the past and had been found by the demons. However, the small flag that Lu Ping had obtained from the secret cave of the Heaven's Inheritance Cave had many unexplained mysteries. Now that Lu Ping's divine sense had entered the small banner, he wanted to refine the newly emerged rune patterns so that he could better control the mysterious little banner. At the same time, he also wanted to see if he could find more rune patterns in the little banner by following the clues. Another ray of light streaked across the sky. Tian Shu Laozu took a look at the sound transmission sword, and his expression turned ugly. He said, "The other sects on Frost Island are also in a state of emergency. Up until now, they have found at least 20 traces of the blood Mara. The Jade Shura has not appeared since that day." Tanqing Laozu said loudly, "It looks like Mara wants to finish this battle in one go." Tian Shu Laozu asked, "How far are the battles of the other sects?" Tian Shu Laozu said in a low voice, "It's not looking good. Xianling sect is doing better, but the Songhai sect is using the island's protective formation to defend against Mara's attack. The situation over at the 12 forces is not looking good either." Tian Shu Laozu thought for a moment and said, "Don't worry about the 12 forces. Although we lost the Qiao family, as long as the remaining 11 joined forces, even our sect will have to be wary of them. They will show their trump cards at the critical moment." Over at the Songhai sect, Nephew Lu used his divine will to severely injure a Dharma adept. The morale of the Songhai sect will be greatly affected, so it is expected that they will not be able to win. But the ones facing the real danger are still our sect. Although the Tao soldiers have taken the initiative to slow down Mara's attack on the island's protective formation, it is only a matter of time. After all, our sect is facing the strongest attack. Once the island's protective formation is trapped, our sect will have no room to retreat. Tianshu Laozu flipped his hands and two flames flashed. He said, "We have to fight this battle no matter what. I just don't know when our sect's reinforcements will arrive." After a cultivator entered the Dharma stage, they began to control the power of space. Mara, who was above the Dharma stage, could also control the power of space. After Mara surrounded Frost Island, because of the appearance of Bloody Mara, the teleportation formation on Frost Island was also in danger. The reinforcements on Frost Island could not go through the teleportation formation and could only fly over. This gave Mara enough time to attack Frost Island. Mara's companion Dharma treasures and half-life Dharma treasures usually improved along with Mara's strength. The great Shura that Wang Qi and the others were facing had the strength of a late core forging cultivator. Naturally, the companion Dharma treasure in its hands was no weaker than a spirit-nurturing Dharma treasure. Although the golden scale sword was Lu Ping's personal sword, it was only a top-grade spirit-connected mystic treasure. Not to mention, Wang Qi's cultivation base was far from the great Shura's spear. Even with Wang Qi's 3 talents array formation, he might not be able to match the spear's power. However, just as the golden scale sword was about to hit the spear, a silver light instantly enveloped the golden scale sword, causing the golden long sword to be inlaid with a silver light. It merged with Wang Qi's golden sword aura. Clang! To everyone's surprise, the golden scale sword was able to deflect Azura's spear. Azura's spear, which had been brandished by the spear, was also deflected. The spear brushed past the right shoulders of the Dark Iron and Dark Iron brothers, cutting off 2 strips of flesh that were half a foot long. Blood dripped down into the sea. The power of Wang Qi's spear was not only unexpected by the Profound Steel and Profound Iron brothers, but also by the others. Even Wang Qi himself did not expect it to be so powerful that it could deflect the spear of a late core forging great Shura. Although spiritual master Xin Liang was surprised, he was still the person in charge of the formation. Seeing that his side had blocked the great Shura's sure kill attack, he immediately used the power of the formation on himself while the great Shura was still exhausted. He threw a short stick at the back of the great Shura's head. After the great Shura's attack failed, the 3 talents and 5 elemental Dao soldier formation continued to operate. Spiritual master Xin Liang could no longer dodge this attack. He was hit so hard that he could not get up for a moment. He fainted and fell from the sky towards the sea. When the other cultivators saw that spiritual master Xian Liang's attack had succeeded, they hurriedly operated the formation and chased after him. Although Wang Qi's hands were numb from the great Shura's spear, the Profound Steel and Profound Iron brothers ignored their injuries and attacked the falling great Shura. Before the great Shura could completely wake up, he was already dismembered in midair. Although spiritual master Xian Liang's team had killed a late core forging great Shura, the Dao soldier formation could not operate smoothly because Profound Steel and Profound Iron were heavily injured. Naturally, the power of the Dao soldier formation would decrease as well. Spiritual master Xian Liang made a prompt decision and immediately ordered everyone to retreat towards the island's protective formation. Just as everyone was about to retreat back to Frost Island, a late core forging great Azura who was fighting spiritual master Xian Yu suddenly attacked the great army formation formed by spiritual master Xian Liang and the others after receiving a blow from spiritual master Xian Yu. At this moment, because everyone was about to retreat to the island, they had already begun to slack off. They did not expect that this Azura would actually ignore Sage Xuanyu's attack and forcefully attack. For a moment, they were all caught unprepared. Perfected Xian Liang shouted and tried his best to command everyone to activate the Dao soldier formation, intending to maximize everyone's defense. The protective formation around the 8 of them was about to run out of energy. The 3 talents and 5 elements had combined into one, but they suddenly realized that Wang Qi had used an extremely strange defensive technique. Perfected Xian Liang's heart moved, and he shouted, "Use Xian Qi's protection divine ability." Everyone channeled their quintessential essence into the huge tortoiseshell shield that Wang Qi had conjured with the Dao soldier formation. Kacha! There was a shattering sound. Although Wang Qi's defensive divine art had been shattered by Azura's unexpected attack, it still managed to block the attack. Wang Qi felt a great force coming from the shattered tortoiseshell shield. Including Reverend Xian Liang and the others, They were all thrown backwards by this great force and fell onto Frost Island. The great Azura had forcefully taken a blow from Reverend Xianyu, and its back was smashed to pieces by countless raindrops. The Azura turned around and fled. It was about to shake off Reverend Xianyu, who was chasing after it, but a cold light shot towards it and pierced through its heart. Reverend Dufeng withdrew his sword and stood. Reverend Xianyu seemed to be very dissatisfied with Reverend Dufeng's interference, and turned around to attack the other great Azura without even greeting him. But at this time, Reverend Dufeng's cry of shock entered Reverend Xianyu's ears. "Watch out!" Reverend Xianyu's heart tightened. His intuition from 200 to 300 years of life and death battles told him that he was most likely facing a moment of life and death. Reverend Xianyu tried his best to shake off this feeling of being on the edge of life and death, but it was to no avail. This feeling only grew stronger. A furious roar that seemed to come from heaven's Laozu came from Frost Island. "You dare!" Yet this voice was the last call Reverend Xianyu heard. Then, he felt that Reverend Dufeng seemed to be trying to save him with all his strength, but his own consciousness seemed to be frozen by a strange coldness and thrown into a bottomless abyss. His vision was quickly swallowed by darkness. Lu Ping had appeared on the battlefield before Heaven's Laozu, but he only had time to save Dufeng, who was trying to kill Reverend Xianyu together with him. Reverend Xianyu himself had turned into countless pieces of ice and fell towards the sea surface. Not even his bones were left. Chapter 9:21. After receiving the Jade Scroll, Lu Ping knew that Mara's attack on Frost Island would be a hard battle. Therefore, after refining the new runes on the little flag, he quietly left the secret room and headed out of Frost Island. Lu Ping's original plan was to strike first, but he didn't expect Mara to act first and take Spiritual Master Xianyu's life. Xue Shura, who ambushed Enlightened Master Xianyu, initially wanted to kill Enlightened Master Dufeng as well, but unexpectedly, Lu Ping had already made his move. The charming autumn sword morphed into countless fishes and formed a wall of sword light in front of Enlightened Master Dufeng, whose chest had caved in. The seeping sword art was good at both offense and defense. It managed to block Mara's fatal blow. At this time, Tiancheng Laozu and Spiritual Master Xian Sen were approaching Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping didn't hand Dufeng over to Laozu. Instead, he pushed Dufeng over to Spiritual Master Xian Sen, who was in the core forging realm. Just as Tiancheng Laozu was confused, his expression suddenly changed. He flipped his palm and pushed backwards. A fire tiger roared and pounced behind him. At the same time, an enormous force came from Tiancheng Laozu's back. Although the fire tiger had blocked most of the force, the remaining force still pushed Tiancheng Laozu dozens of steps forward before he could stabilize himself. Ancestor Tiancheng suddenly looked back and happened to see a column of water turn into mist under the flame, covering the area within a radius of dozens of feet. However, this mist didn't hinder Laozu's mental investigation. A water Azura dressed as a woman was holding a spirit treasure that looked like a wine cup. She was walking towards Tiancheng Laozu through the mist. On the other side, Lu Ping saw that Spiritual Master Xian Sun had safely sent Dufeng back to Frost Island. When he turned around, the ice Azura that had ambushed and killed Spiritual Master Xian Yu was already faintly appearing in front of Lu Ping. Its transparent body looked like it was about to be completely covered by the light. After Spiritual Master Xian San brought Dufeng back to Frost Island, Laozu of Sky Mountain had already sent the news. Spiritual Master Xian San immediately commanded the cultivators of Zhenling to use the 3 talents 5 elements Dao Soldier formation to resist Mara's attacks. At the same time, this was to reduce the losses of his disciples. The disciples of Zhenling gradually retreated and began to rely on the island's protective formation to resist Mara's attacks. At the same time, they also wanted to free up the space outside the island. When Dharma adepts began to fight, the area outside the island was no longer safe. Seeing that the disciples of Zhenling had begun to retreat, Mara surged forward with the intention of breaking through the obstruction of the disciples of Zhenling and shattering the island's protective formation. Then, he would enter Frost Island and occupy the large spirit vein. Meanwhile, The people of Jinling would rely on the formation's support to stop Mars' attacks. Lu Ping's pair of flying swords circled in the air. The ice azura in front of him suddenly revealed a sinister smile. Lu Ping's mental consciousness swept out and immediately discovered that the water vapor in the surroundings had begun to condense into tiny ice needles that were hard to see with the naked eye. The ice azura's hands clasped and pushed, and the tiny ice needles from all directions all flew towards Lu Ping, causing Lu Ping to not even have the space to dodge. Lu Ping's pair of swords shot out and went straight for the ice azura's neck. At the same time, he pressed down slightly with his hands, causing a water spout to hang upside down. A cylindrical water barrier surrounded Lu Ping in the middle. The countless ice needles had just shot into the water barrier when they were hit by the crisscrossing undercurrents within the water barrier, causing them to lose their momentum and quickly melt within it. The ice azura opened its mouth and spat out a gust of cold air dozens of feet away. As soon as the upside-down water spout came into contact with the cold air, it completely froze into ice. A huge icicle, together with Lu Ping, was sealed within the icicle. However, at that moment, the ice azura's expression changed. It punched out, and the icicle exploded into countless pieces. However, there was no trace of Lu Ping among them. When he looked down, he saw a pair of flying swords crisscrossing, and 3 great shuras had already been beheaded, pierced through the chest, and cut in half at the waist. One of the great shuras was also equivalent to a late-stage core forging realm cultivator. The ice azura was furious, and with it as the center, a gust of cold air spread out in all directions. Soon, a layer of white frost formed in the void, forming the outline of a human figure. Lu Ping lifted the cloud-light 5 elements robe, and the ice azura's ice sword was already stabbing towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping's expression was solemn. This ice sword was obviously the ice azura's accompanying spiritual treasure. In the hands of the ice azura, it was an existence comparable to a calamity spiritual treasure. There was a flash of light under Lu Ping's feet, and his entire person flashed in all directions. However, as the ice sword was waved, these figures were all frozen into ice sculptures. Only Lu Ping's real body was caught up by the ice sword while he was dodging. At this time, it was too late to withdraw the autumn dew sword, but Lu Ping crossed his hands, and 2 long swords crisscrossed. After 2 clanging sounds, although the pair of flying swords were no match for the ice sword spirit treasure, the ice sword was also hit by the flying swords and stopped in midair, unable to chase after the ice sword. The autumn dew sword flew back, and together with the pair of flying swords that Lu Ping had cast, they circled around, facing the ice sword in the hands of the ice azura. The thin stream sword. Whether it was the thin stream sword or the long stream sword, each sword had condensed 9 treasures and was a top-notch spirit-nurturing spiritual treasure. In addition, Lu Ping had inherited the vast sea sword technique, so he was able to fully activate the power of the pair of flying swords. Under the combination of the 2 swords, the pair of flying swords were barely qualified to compete with spirit-nurturing spiritual treasures. Just as Lu Ping and the ice azura were fighting, Tian Chung Laozu had already fought with the other water azura. Although Tian Chung Laozu had the protection of the mother and child traction formation, and his fire-based skills were superb, under the attacks of the water azura's accompanying spiritual treasure, he was constantly losing ground. He had enough defense, but not enough offense. Another jade scroll cut through the sky, and Tian Chung Laozu took it and looked at it. He laughed coldly and threw the jade scroll to Tian Shu Laozu, who was beside him, and said, "The water mist pavilion is asking for help." Tian Shu Laozu took the jade scroll and scanned it with his divine will. He said angrily, 2 Dharma adepts are fighting against a blood azura, and they still want to ask for help? What should our sect do? A few tens of disciples have perished. Could it be that the pressure they're under is heavier than our sect? Over 100 disciples of our sect have perished, and even 7 or 8 core forging realm cultivators have perished. Moreover, there are over 10 disciples that have entered the battle while carrying injuries. How much pressure is their Mistwater Pavilion suffering? Tian Shan Laozu said, "It's the island's protective formation that can't hold on any longer. It's not that the 2 Dharma adepts of the Water Mist Pavilion can't stop the Blood Azura. Instead, It's the blood Azura that's tangling with the two of them, causing them to be unable to help their disciples. Now, the disciples of the Water Mist Pavilion can no longer rely on the island's protective formation and are hiding within it. Tian Shu Laozu said anxiously, "Doesn't that mean that the Water Mist Pavilion can only be attacked passively? It's only a matter of time before the island's protective formation is broken through?" Tian Shan Laozu sighed and said, "If one part of Frost Island is broken through, then it's completely broken through. We still have to save the Water Mist Pavilion, but there's no need to rush. The Water Mist Pavilion won't fall so easily." There was an explosion in the sky. Tian Shan and Tian Shu Laozu looked up and saw Tian Cheng Laozu rushing back from midair. He crashed hard into the protective shield of the island's protective formation, and ripples were created. On the other side of the sky, the water Shura that was fighting with Tian Cheng Laozu was also retreating. No matter how much he flipped and bumped, the crystal baron in his hand didn't dare to shake at all. It was as if the crystal baron would shatter if he moved it. Just as the water Shura stabilized his body, a cloud of mist appeared in the crystal baron. The mist flowed up along the burnt body of the water Shura. After the mist flowed past, the injuries caused by Tian Cheng Laozu began to recover rapidly. Tian Cheng Laozu jumped up from the island's protective formation. A few Mara who saw the opportunity rushed forward and saw Tian Cheng Laozu's face turn red. He spat out a mouthful of blood and turned it into a flame in midair. It turned the few Mara who rushed forward into ashes. Tian Cheng Laozu coughed hard and scolded, "Son of AB*T, you want to take advantage of the old man? Why don't you take a look at your own teeth?" His words seemed to be directed at the few Shuras who had been burned to ashes, but it also seemed to be directed at the blood Shura who was holding the crystal baron. Seeing that Tian Cheng Laozu was at a disadvantage, Tian Shu Laozu was anxious and wanted to go forward to help. However, Tian Shan Laozu reached out and stopped him. "Wait, junior brother Tian Cheng can still hold on. Once we go out, other blood Mara will come out to fight. Let me go first." Tian Shu Laozu heard this and said, "But senior brother, you will still find blood Mara to fight when you go out." Tian Shan Laozu smiled and said, "The most important thing now is to buy time. I think the cultivators from our sect and other sects are already on their way." Tian Cheng Laozu had already fought with the water Shura again. However, this time, Tian Cheng Laozu did not dare to go too far away from the island's protective formation. With the support of the formation, Tian Cheng Laozu could borrow the power of the island's protective formation to fight against the water Shura who had the accompanying spiritual treasure. In this way, although Tian Cheng Laozu had the support of the island's protective formation, he was still at a disadvantage when fighting against the water Shura. After all, while Tian Cheng Laozu borrowed the power of the formation, he was also bound by the formation and could not roam around in the sky like the water Shura. However, Tian Cheng Laozu only defended and did not attack, so the water Shura could not do anything to him for a while. Tian Shan Laozu flew through the air and walked out of the island's protective formation. He did not bring the protective shield of the mother and child traction formation with him. A green Shura was standing in front of Tian Shan Laozu. Tian Shan Laozu seemed to know that there was a Shura here and did not show any surprise at its appearance. Roar! An angry roar came from the other side of Frost Island. The ice Shura was filled with hatred. The human cultivator in front of it was like a slippery loach. He clearly had the strength to fight it, but he chose not to fight it head-on. Instead, he relied on his escape skills to wander around, hiding from place to place. However, what angered Isazura even more was that not only was this person dodging all over the place, he just had to purposefully charge towards the Devil Azura army that was attacking Frost Island. His 4 flying swords rampaged through the Devil Azura army, and more than a dozen little Azuras were often turned into broken limbs. Even if he occasionally crashed into the Great Azura army, those Great Azuras whose strength was equivalent to that of the middle and early stage of the core forging realm would rarely be able to withstand a single blow from him. Chapter 922. Lu Ping's actions completely infuriated the Ice Shura that was chasing him. After the two of them exchanged blows, No less than 7 or 8 great shuras had already fallen under Lu Ping's sword, including 2 great shuras that were equivalent to late-stage core forging cultivators. When the ice shura saw that it couldn't catch up to Lu Ping, it seemed to have made up its mind in its rage and suddenly stopped moving. Lu Ping thought to himself, "Oh no," and was about to turn around and rush toward the ice shura. The ice sword in the ice shura's hand had turned into an ice bead the size of a pellet. The ice shura spat it out of its mouth and smashed toward the island's protective formation like lightning. Lu Ping's pair of flying swords missed, but Lu Ping didn't even look at the ice bead. After the fainting autumn sword missed, the thin water-flowing sword had already turned around from the ice shura's back. The 2 swords combined and stabbed toward the ice shura's back. The ice shura released 18 ice walls in a row and finally managed to block the 2 swords. Meanwhile, screams of pain came from Frost Island behind Lu Ping. The ice bead pierced through Frost Island's protective formation in one fell swoop. 3 of the Jinling cultivators behind the formation were pierced by the ice bead. The cold energy carried by the ice bead flowed through the blood vessels of the wounds and into the victim's heart space, turning them into ice sculptures. Then, as the heart space exploded, the ice sculptures shattered into ice shards. A second-generation core forging cultivator tried to stop the ice bead, but the ice bead was the ice shura's companion spirit treasure after all. It wasn't something a late-stage core forging cultivator could stop. The ice bead directly shattered his natal artifact and went straight for his head under his despairing gaze. Just as the Jinling sect was about to lose another late-stage core forging cultivator, the ice bead suddenly shot back without warning. The second-generation cultivator coughed up a mouthful of blood due to the destruction of his magic treasure, but there was no joy in his eyes. Instead, there was a hint of sorrow. Originally, although this person's chances of advancing to the Dharma stage were slim, there was still a sliver of hope, giving him some hope to work hard. But now that his natal treasure had been destroyed, it had directly injured his foundation. Even if his injuries recovered in the future, the damage to his foundation would destroy his last hope of advancing to the Dharma stage. Perhaps even he himself knew that even if that sliver of hope was not extinguished with his abilities, it was almost impossible for him to advance to the Dharma stage in the future. But sometimes, people would always rely on hope to improve their mental state. But now, this person didn't even have any hope. Although he still had over 100 years before his lifespan came to an end, these 100 years were nothing to him, and he was just a walking corpse. Looking up, he saw that Lu Xinping, who was in the sky, had somehow combined the 4 flying swords into a great sword formation. Taking advantage of the time when the Ice Shura's natal treasure flew away, he had already trapped the Ice Shura in the sword formation. No wonder the ice bead suddenly returned when it was about to take his life. With martial nephew Lu's unfathomable level of cultivation, if the Blood Shura lost his natal treasure, perhaps he really wouldn't be a match for him. Perhaps the people in the sect who really had the hope of advancing to the Dharma stage would always be people like martial nephew Lu Xinping. His dream of advancing to the Dharma stage was just a self-deceiving dream. Junior brother Zhou, how are you? Forefather Tian Shu had sensed that something was wrong when the Ice Azura suddenly attacked Frost Island with her life-bound spirit treasure. But by the time he reacted, the ice sword had already pierced through the island's protective formation and killed several people in a row. Zhenrenzhou laughed bitterly and said, "No worries, I can still hold on." Tian Shu Laozu sighed and turned to walk out of the island. With Tian Shu Laozu's vision, he could see everything that had happened to Zhenrenzhou. However, these things couldn't be explained away with words. Just as Tian Shu Laozu walked to the island's protective formation, a rainbow bridge had already crossed over the sea. The rainbow light flashed with intoxicating colors, but Tian Shu Laozu's eyes were dark. He reached out with his right hand, and a slingshot appeared in his hand. His left and right palms lit up, and a golden pellet was pinched into the slingshot with his left hand. With a sudden pull and release, the golden pellet turned into a golden arc in the sky, and then collided with the rainbow bridge. Ever since Tian Shu Laozu lost to Lu Ping, Tian Shu Laozu reflected on the painful experience and studied many spells and techniques. This increased his ability to adapt to the situation and at the same time increased his strength significantly. However, Tianshu Grand Ancestor knew very well that this so-called increase in strength wasn't because he still had great potential. Instead, it was because his original strength hadn't been fully unleashed after entering the Avatar realm. This was also the reason why Tianshu Grand Ancestor didn't have any offensive moves against Liu Ping. In the end, he could only rely on his cultivation base to suppress Liu Ping. But in the end, he was defeated by Liu Ping. 4 colors of the rainbow light were destroyed by Tianshu Laozu's golden pellet, but the remaining 3 colors still collided with the island's protective formation. Tianshu Laozu's expression was dark. At this moment, he had used up all his previous strength and had yet to recover. He forcefully condensed a spell and attacked, but it wasn't even 30 to 40% of his usual power. He only managed to knock down 2 colors, and the remaining color could no longer be stopped and directly collided with the island's protective formation. At the core of the mother-child traction formation, Spiritual Master Xian Chun shook his head helplessly. He took out the stone that had been embedded into the formation plate that had already turned into pieces and then replaced it with a supreme-grade spirit stone. At the same time, there were several disciples walking around on the enormous formation plate. From time to time, they would remove the high-grade spirit stones embedded into the formation plate that had used up all their spirit energy and replace them with high-grade spirit stones that were full of spirit energy. Only the dozen or so grooves around Spiritual Master Xian Chun were embedded with supreme-grade spirit stones, and Spiritual Master Xian Chun was personally replacing them. Underneath the formation plate, the few spirit veins that Jinling had accumulated on Frost Island were also providing endless spirit energy to the formation plate. Tianshu Laozu stood at the side and said, "Senior brother, I'm afraid that Tianshu won't be able to hold on for long." At the side, Tian Fan Laozu didn't reply immediately. Instead, he stared for a moment before saying, "Just this much effort alone has already used up a huge amount of high-grade spirit stones and supreme-grade spirit stones. However, there's no other way. That Jade Shura is definitely hiding in the surroundings right now. The moment you make a move and get entangled by the other Mara, that Jade Shura will definitely make a move. At that time, even if I make a move, I'm afraid that I won't be able to stop the Jade Shura from breaking the formation." Tianshu Laozu said, "But that hidden blood demon still hasn't shown himself. Even if we work together to stop the Jade Shura, that blood demon is enough to be the key to breaking the formation. Moreover, this time, Mara is attacking Frost Island en masse, but there are too few devil cultivators among them." Tian Fan Laozu was still indifferent. Tianshu Laozu said anxiously, "Lingu sect and Soaring Feather sect are already shrinking the island's great formation. They are retreating towards the spirit vein at the center of Frost Island. Mara has already successfully landed at the place where the 2 sects are stationed." If, Tian Fan Laozu suddenly said, "This Lingu sect and Soaring Feather sect are really useless. However, junior sister, where do you think that Xiang Lu is right now?" Tianshu Laozu was stunned and said, "Senior brother thinks that he will come here?" Just as Tianshu Laozu finished speaking, a cultivator-like person dressed in snow-white clothes suddenly appeared in the sky above the Frost Island's great formation. The Jade Shura had appeared. Unlike Blood Devil Luo's red eyes, Jade Shura looked like a normal human, but she had a unique aura that was like the condensation of the original spirit. If she appeared in front of a cultivator, she would not be able to hide it. However, when they used their unique escape arts, the aura of spirit energy became the best way for them to hide their aura. It was the best way to attack and kill cultivators. The entire sea seemed to be boiling. The Jade Shura was high up in the sky, as if she was the king of the sea. The angry seawater surged as if it wanted to bury the entire Frost Island at the bottom of the sea. Boom, 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 boom. The sects that were still defending the island's great formation without retreating all collapsed the moment the Jade Shura appeared. The entire island's great formation began to shrink inwards in a strange way. As long as they could protect the large spirit stone mine in the center of Frost Island, then the defense of Frost Island could be considered a victory. Jade Shura's appearance had completely changed the situation on the battlefield. The enemy was strong, and they were weak. The cultivators of the North Sea had to quickly pull back their battle lines, abandon their previous strategy of fighting individually, and work together to fight the enemy. Perhaps that was the only way they could protect the spiritual stone mine under the siege of Devil Luo. Except for Jinling. Jinling was still guarding the outer perimeter of Frost Island, not allowing Mara to land on Frost Island from the area Jinling was stationed at. The frost cliff where the medium-sized spirit stone mine was had been built into a temporary palace by Jinling. However, the location of the palace was not far from the coast. Therefore, the other sects could retreat, but Jinling could not. This mid-sized spirit stone mine had attracted a lot of envy, jealousy, and hatred for Jinling's sect in the past few decades. This time, the cultivators hiding at the center of Frost Island could finally rejoice in Jinling's sect's misfortune. You deserve it, aren't you? Who told you to take it all for yourself? Although the cultivators of the sects would not say these words out loud, everyone understood that without the lips, the teeth would be interdependent. Without Jinling, the other sects of Frost Island would not be able to resist the siege of Mo Luo's army even if they joined forces. Therefore, the cultivators of the sects, from Lao Tzu to the ordinary cultivators, were furious that Jinling was still stubbornly defending that medium-sized spirit stone mine. At this time, he was still guarding that spirit stone mine without letting go. Was he going to give up the large spirit stone mine on Frost Island for that medium-sized spirit stone mine? The curses gradually rose. Although Lao Tzu did not say anything with a dark face, the disciples of his sects, including the usually prestigious core forging cultivators, also began to curse loudly. Was Jinling going to drag the entire North Sea cultivation world down for a medium-sized spirit stone mine? If they could survive this, they might have to reduce Jinling's share of this large spirit stone mine. Yes, that was how it should be. For a moment, although the cultivators of the sects still looked impassioned, their thoughts were all conveying the same thought. Even the old and steady Dharma adepts seemed to be moved. Between the looks of their eyes, it was unknown what kind of plan they were conveying that could only be understood but could not be put into words. Chapter 9:23. Jinling always worried about inequality rather than scarcity, and the cultivation world was no exception. Jinling's sole possession of a medium-sized spirit stone mine with abundant reserves had already made many cultivators in the North Sea envious. Now that Frost Island was being attacked by Mara, and Jinling was fighting a bloody battle for its own spirit stone mine, the first thing that came to the cultivators' minds was not to join forces to defeat the enemy, but rather to hope that this spirit stone mine would be destroyed by Mara's hands. Of course, it would be best if both sides suffered heavy losses, and Jinling would lose one or two Dharma adepts because of this, even if they were heavily injured. This was the nature of human nature, and even cultivators were no exception. Fortunately, with a great enemy in front of them, the cultivators of the various sects could not do things like backstabbing. After all, the crisis on Frost Island had not been resolved yet. At the very least, the sects understood that without the lips, the teeth would be interdependent. Therefore, after the various sects pulled back to the center of Frost Island, the protective shield of the island where Jinling was stationed in the center of Frost Island was not destroyed by the swarming Mara. Lao Tzu of the various sects sent their cultivators to protect this path of retreat for Jinling, and Jinling also sent many of his disciples here to join forces with the cultivators of the various sects, blocking Mara who intended to cut off the connection between the two sides. Of course, the reason why the sects put in so much effort was not just because without the lips, the teeth would be interdependent. It was because when the Jade Shura appeared, there were two auras that rose from Jinling's garrison that made Lao Tzu of the various sects shocked and bewildered them. They were shocked because these two auras were too familiar to the North Sea cultivation world's Lao Tzu, to the point that they were horrified. The Wind and Snow Immortals. In the era when Jinling's sect still dominated the North Sea cultivation world, these two were the only ones in the North Sea who could defeat Lao Tzu at the same time. They were also the most solid foundation for Jinling to restrict Jinling's sect. Even after Celestial Phenomenon Lao Tzu became a Grand Adept and became the new symbol of Jinling, the name of the Wind and Snow Immortals still shook the entire North Sea cultivation world. This was because when people thought of Jinling, they would not only think of celestial phenomenon Laozu, but also Jinling, who had the wind and snow immortals, had 2 Dharma adepts, and Jinling had the most basic requirements of a large sect. However, they were puzzled. Hadn't Patriarch Tianfan already gone to the East Sea? How long had it been since he went to the East Sea? When did he return to the North Sea? Why didn't the sects know? Why did Tianfan Laozu sneak into Frost Island so secretly without letting any of the forces in the North Sea know? Looking at the sky full of Mara, could it be that Jinling had already predicted that Mara would start a war of this scale, and had even predicted that Jade Shura would make a move? Or was this a plot by Jinling? No matter how many times Laozu's thoughts turned, the current grim situation made it impossible for the sects to care about anything else. At least the appearance of the wind and snow immortals had lifted the morale of the North Sea cultivators, who had been low because of Jade Shura's appearance. Pitter-patter. However, the joy of the appearance of the wind and snow immortals was immediately drowned out by the crowd's fear. At this time, people remembered that the 3 of them were almost equivalent to 2 great Dharma adepts in battle. When the 3 of them fought, unless they were adepts of the same level, even early Dharma adepts could be affected by the aftermath of the battle. An invisible wave rippled out from the center of the 3's battle. Within a radius of a few hundred feet, minor repairs Shura below the core forging stage were all turned back into the source of heaven and earth. The Grand Shura also suffered heavy casualties. Fortunately, these Grand Shura were alert, and most of them stayed away when the 2 sides were fighting. This wave also affected the human adepts on Frost Island. Even with the protection of the island's protective formation, many blood condensation adepts still bled from the mouth and nose of the battle. A Jade Shura's strength was only equivalent to a mid-Dharma adept's, but if the companion spirit treasure of the Jade Shura, which was equivalent to a second disaster spirit treasure, was included, then its strength could be close to that of a great Dharma adept. One only had to look at the vast sea relic and the invincible ancestor Tian Kong, who wielded the second calamity spirit treasure, the mountain-splitting axe, to know how powerful a second calamity spirit treasure was in the hands of a mid-Dharma adept. However, there was a difference. The mountain-splitting axe was not Tian Kong Laozu's life treasure, but the companion spirit treasure, and companion spirit treasure in the hands of every Shura was something that had accompanied them since they were born. Therefore, the power of the companion spirit treasure in the hands of a Jade Shura was even stronger than that of Tian Kong Laozu, who wielded the mountain-splitting axe. Although the wind and snow immortals' participation in the battle did not change the situation of the battle, it greatly raised the morale of all the sects on Frost Island. Moreover, under the attack of the wind and snow immortals, although the Jade Shura could protect herself, it was extremely difficult for her to gain the upper hand. The battle between Lu Ping and the Ice Shura had reached its climax. The companion spirit treasure that could quickly switch between Ice Sword and Ice Bead was firmly suppressing Lu Ping. If it was not for the incredible defensive power of the fluttering flag above Lu Ping's head after it returned to being a spirit-nurturing spirit treasure, Lu Ping might have been able to escape from the Ice Shura's relentless attacks, even if he was not injured. Although Lu Ping had used the 4 flying swords, Beautiful Autumn Waters and Thin Water Forever, to form the Sea of All Rivers sword formation, hoping to completely trap the Shura within the sword formation. However, after the companion spirit treasure returned, the Ice Bead first turned into an ice sword that crashed into the sword formation, and then turned into a giant ice ball. The Ice Shura directly melted into the ice ball, and just like that, it ignored the tens of thousands of sword lights formed by the 4 flying swords and rushed out. After that, Lu Ping was once again at a disadvantage in the battle against the Ice Shura. Fortunately, Lu Ping had a treasure like the water-controlling flag, which allowed Lu Ping to withstand the Ice Shura's pressure. The water-controlling flag was originally a treasure left behind by Jiao Yuqiang, the master craftsman of the Fei Ling sect. After it was completely repaired by Lu Ping, its power had been completely restored. In addition, Lu Ping had condensed 9 Shield of Vigor into 1, and he had recently mastered the Great Protective Power, Water Curtain Heaven Splendor. When the Water Curtain Heaven Splendor was used with the help of the water-controlling flag, Lu Ping finally understood how Jiao Yuqiang was able to withstand the combined attacks of 3 or 4 early Dharma adepts with just a treasure that had just entered the spirit cultivation stage. Lu Ping had used the great protective power of the water-controlling flag to directly block the attack of the companion spirit treasure. Although the shield had been pierced, the ice sword was also at the end of its strength after piercing through the water curtain of the water-controlling flag. Before Lu Ping could use any other methods to block it, the Ice Shura had already withdrawn the ice sword. At this time, Lu Ping finally realized that in the sky above Frost Island, there were more than 10 Blood Shura participating in the battle against Frost Island. Other than the 4 that Jinling was dealing with, the other Sex Laozu were also fighting with the Blood Shura. However, what shocked Lu Ping was that among these 10 or so fighting groups, the ones fighting were all Blood Shura. There was not a single blood demon. However, when Mara was attacking Frost Island, he could clearly sense the presence of the blood demons. In addition, the number of demonic cultivators in Mara's army had obviously decreased. The uneasiness in Lu Ping's heart had already become stronger. Where did these demonic cultivators go, and what were they doing? Naturally, Lu Ping was not the only one who had realized something was wrong. Many of the Dharma adepts fighting in the sky above Frost Island and the cultivators in the protective shield of Frost Island had already realized that something was wrong. However, they were either entangled by the Blood Shura or trapped in the protective shield of the island. Even if they were anxious, they could only watch as the hidden demonic cultivators calmly used their own methods. At this time, Tian Fan Laozu, who was fighting with the Jade Shura in the sky above Frost Island, suddenly gave a loud warning. He said, "All sects, beware of the demonic cultivator's soul-devouring technique." Tian Fan Laozu's sudden warning spread throughout the entire Frost Island. Without any hesitation, Jinling immediately ordered the main formation cultivators in their respective Dao soldier formations to take some measures to defend against the attacks of the demonic cultivators. The other sects in the center of Frost Island were a little slower. It was only when the mid-Dharma adepts of their respective sects also noticed that something was amiss and issued a warning that they began to hurriedly put up some defensive measures. However, at this time, the Mara army that was besieging them seemed to have already expected this. They immediately went crazy and began to attack the protective shield of the island. Many of the cultivators from the various sects lost their lives due to the earlier chaos from Mara's wild attacks. At the border between the Lingu sect and the 12 sects, Mara even broke open a gap. Dozens of Mara swarmed out from this gap. If it wasn't for the alertness of the dozen mid- and late-core forging adepts from the 12 sects and the Lingu sect, who risked their lives to rush out and reseal the gap, and persevered until the protective shield of the island closed the gap again, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Even so, the dozens of Mara that rushed into the protective shield of the island still caused great damage to the cultivators from the various sections. 20 to 30 blood condensation adepts were killed by Mara in the chaos, and a few core forging adepts also fell, especially the dozen or so mid and late core forging adepts who blocked the gap. They were facing a pincer attack from Mara, and the pressure they had to bear was even heavier. After persevering to restore the protective shield of the island, only 7 or 8 of the 10 or so cultivators survived. However, this was only the beginning of the nightmare. Following a cry of alarm, a mass of dark clouds came from the north of Frost Island, covering the sky and sun, turning the entire sky and earth pitch black. Many cultivators let out cries of alarm. That dark cloud was obviously something that surrounded the body of the demonic cultivators. How many demonic cultivators were hidden within this scene that seemed to cover the sky and sun? At this time, Lu Ping was already retreating in the direction of Zhenling. Not only him, but the other Zhenling Dharma form Laozu and the Dharma adepts of the various sects were also retreating in the direction of their respective sections. Lu Ping's divine consciousness had long discovered the situation within the dark clouds. Hundreds of blood fiends suddenly appeared under the leadership of 4 blood fiends. Under the cover of the dark clouds, they formed a strange formation in mid-air. It seemed to be a huge Dao soldier formation. Moreover, this strange chill seemed to be trying to freeze the space, making it difficult for Lu Ping to move within this range of tens of feet. The blood Shura's face was ferocious as he attacked Lu Ping from behind. At this time, Lu Ping had already been restrained by his trump card. Although he could not completely freeze Lu Ping, as long as he could cause a little impact on Lu Ping, it would be enough to put Lu Ping to death in a fight between masters. A dense chill rose from the blood Shura's hand, condensing into a spirit treasure ice pearl again, and then into an ice sword, about to stab Lu Ping in the back. Suddenly, a thunderclap exploded in mid-air. The blood Shura shuddered. When he looked up, he saw a drought thunder exploding above his head. A golden light stretched out in mid-air with many branches, falling directly on the blood Shura's head. In water divine thunder. It was a great thunder magic, the in water divine thunder. The blood Shura turned pale with fright. He no longer cared about Lu Ping, who could kill him with a single stab. As he turned around and retreated, the chill around him all condensed towards him. Finally, he wrapped the ice ball around his body again before the divine thunder hit him. All demonic Luos, regardless of whether they were demon cultivators or Shura cultivators, regardless of their cultivation base and strength, had an innate fear of thunder spells. Not to mention that the in water divine thunder was also a very powerful great skill. When it was cast by Lu Ping, with the help of the 7 treasures Thunder Gourd, the power of the great skill was increased by another 30%. Even Blood Shura had to use all his life-saving skills to defend himself. This was also why the Yuan family of Middle-earth could become the #1 family. Just by relying on the thunder magic that was passed down through their bloodline, the Yuan family was no less useful than the 6 great sects when Mara had wreaked havoc during the Great Calamity. Lu Ping's great thunder magic not only repelled the Blood Shura, but also completely destroyed the divine art that had been blessed by the blood Shura within a radius of dozens of meters. Lu Ping's figure flashed as he turned into an escaping light and landed on Frost Island. He glanced back and saw Blood Azura walking out of the shattered ice ball in a sorry state. Clearly, even if the divine in water thunder didn't heavily injure him, it still gave him a great fright. Originally, the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash had yet to evolve into a spirit-nurturing artifact. Although the power of the Chaos Purple Thunder divine art it had unleashed was far greater than ordinary great arts, and could almost compete with the great art of moving mountains and filling oceans, it was still beyond its power to unleash a single great art, the in water divine thunder. However, after Lu Ping had refined the Tribulation Lightning Water and advanced to the peak of the Core Forging Realm, Lu Ping had used the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash to cultivate the Water Attribute Thunder magic alone, and had easily mastered the in Water Divine Thunder Great Art. Although the in Water Divine Thunder was not as good as the Chaotic Thunder Light in the 7-gem Thunder Calabash, its power was considered to be among the best among the great magic skills. In such a chaotic battlefield, the in Water Divine Thunder Great Magic skill could not be more suitable to not reveal the existence of the 7-gem Thunder Calabash and still be able to be a trump card to resist Blood Shura. However, it was not possible for Lu Ping to cast other great arts of a single attribute, such as the Earth Divine Thunder or the Wood Divine Thunder. Even with the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash, he could not cast great arts of a single attribute. If Lu Ping hadn't refined the Tribulation Lightning Water, he would have had to find another way to practice the Water Attribute Thunder magic, and he would have had to pay a huge price. Just as Lu Ping had returned to the island's protective formation, the soul-devouring divine art that had gathered hundreds of demonic cultivators finally erupted. An invisible wave swept towards Frost Island amidst the strange sound. Lu Ping turned pale with fright. At this time, not only Lu Ping, but even the Dharma adepts of other sects, other than the middle Dharma adepts of Lao Tzu, could not return to the disciples of their sections. Instead, it was people like Tian Shu Lao Tzu who were weak and could only rely on the protective formation to resist the Blood Shura's Dharma power. Because Lao Tzu was close, he was able to turn around and enter the formation. Meanwhile, the 2 Lao Tzu of Tian Shan and Tian Cheng were even further away from the power of Frost Island than Lu Ping. When the soul-devouring divine art rushed towards him, Lu Ping could only retract his divine consciousness and gather it together to protect himself, hoping that he could withstand the impact of the soul-devouring divine art. At this time, Lu Ping's mind moved, and the small banner rose from the top of Lu Ping's head. Coincidentally, the soul-devouring divine art attacked, and the small banner moved without any wind. In Lu Ping's divine consciousness, the mysterious seal inscriptions on the banner lit up one by one. At the same time, many mysterious seal inscriptions appeared on the blank space of the banner, covering almost half of the banner in an instant. In Lu Ping's divine consciousness, when the soul-devouring divine art rushed in front of Lu Ping, it actually made a strange half-arc, avoiding the impact on Lu Ping, and continued to rush towards the protective formation behind Lu Ping. The divine consciousness that Lu Ping had condensed to resist the soul-devouring divine art was actually useless. Spiritual Master Xian Sen thought that Lu Ping was trying to be brave and said, "What is the situation? Now is not the time to be brave. The damage to your physical body is related to the advancement of your cultivation in the future." Seeing that Tian Shu Laozu was approaching, Lu Ping said in a low voice, "Martial uncle, did you forget about the Linglong wine cauldron?" Chapter 9:25. Although Lu Ping was sent flying by the Blood Shura, he still had the Linglong wine cauldron to protect him. Although the Linglong wine cauldron could not be considered a defensive spiritual treasure, it was still a treasure that had survived the lightning calamity. No matter how weak its defensive capabilities were, it would not be weaker than a top-notch spirit-nurturing treasure. Furthermore, Lu Ping had taken many pills to strengthen his physical body, so his physical strength was already comparable to that of a Dharma adept. Hence, although he was sent flying by the Blood Shura, and although it was shocking, he did not suffer any serious internal injuries. Tian Shu Laozu leaped over to Lu Ping and looked up. "How are your injuries?" Lu Ping smiled. "I'm fine." Tian Shu Laozu nodded and turned to leave. Lu Ping looked at the Jinling disciples around him and asked, "Uncle Master, what's the situation like?" Perfected Xian San said worriedly, "It's not good." Although our sect had already predicted it, and Uncle Master Tian Shui and Senior Brother Tian Shu had rushed back in time, no one expected that there would be so many demonic cultivators in hiding. Furthermore, they had formed such a Dao soldier formation. This power is really unexpected. More than 100 blood condensation disciples had their divine senses dispersed in an instant. Even 3 core forging disciples had their divine senses disrupted due to carelessness. The rest had even more divine senses and divine senses damaged. Lu Ping was shocked. So many? Isn't it covered by the island's protective formation? If a blood condensation realm disciple lost his divine sense, he would be no different from a zombie. Even a core forging realm disciple would die if his divine sense was disrupted. This was different from perfected Xian Sen's battle outside in Tian Dojo. Only their divine senses were severely damaged, but they did not lose their foundation. They could still recover with the help of the Soul Return Pill. Taoist Master Xian Sen shook his head and sighed. "I'm afraid that many of the highly regarded 4th-generation disciples have been left with internal injuries this time. Their future achievements will be limited. Even those core forging realm disciples with damaged divine senses, although they have enough soul return pills to treat their injuries, I'm afraid that their cultivation time will be extended and their hopes of advancing further will be cut off." As the two of them spoke, they began to gather their disciples. At the same time, they retreated along with the shrinking of the Zhenling sect's island guarding formation so that they could gather the last of their strength to resist Emo Luo's attack. After all, the soul-devouring formation formed by the devil cultivators would not only launch this attack. How are the other sects? Worse. Enlightened Master Xian San and Lu Ping retreated as the island's protective array formation shrank. At the same time, they were also blocking the Shura's attacks so that the disciples could carry away the dead or heavily injured disciples. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion in the sky. Lu Ping's expression changed. "Oh no, Uncle Master Tiancheng is injured. Uncle Master, go and help him. Leave this to me." Lu Ping also took out the faded autumn sword and the thin water sword. The 4 flying swords moved in all directions, and dozens of shuras, including the 3 grand shuras, were sent flying. The shura's attack suddenly stopped. Perfected Xian San took the opportunity to leave and brought Tianqing Laozu, who was also sent flying, back to the protective formation. Tianqing Laozu's appearance was much worse than Lu Ping's. His energy was dissipating, and Lu Ping's heart sank. A Dharma adept's body and Dharma power were one, and their energy was restrained. If the core space was not broken, there would not be any energy dissipating. However, once a Dharma adept's energy dissipated, even if it was not life-threatening, there would be no hope of improving in the future. From afar, Tianqing Laozu's laughter could be heard. That guy did not get any benefits either. Although he was not injured, his accompanying spiritual treasure has already been destroyed by the old man. Who knows, he might have to create a new accompanying spiritual treasure. In the distance, perfected Xian Sen's face was so gloomy that it could drip water. The spirit pills in his hand were poured into Tianqing Laozu's mouth as if they were free. Another muffled sound could be heard. Tianshan Laozu had finally escaped from the blood shura. Lu Ping could clearly see that the mountain-driving whip in Laozu's hand was trembling slightly. Fortunately, Tianshan Laozu's expression was calm. It was obvious that even though he was at a disadvantage in that attack, he did not suffer a great loss. Tianshan Laozu's defensive powers were not for nothing. In the sky above Frost Island, only Tianfan Laozu was left fighting with the Jade Shura. However, without Tian Shui and Laozu working together, Tianfan Laozu's ability was not much better than the other mid-Dharma adepts. Although he had the wind snow fans in his hand, it was still only a first disaster spiritual treasure. Under the Jade Shura's relentless attacks, he was slowly losing ground. However, at this moment, Tianfan Laozu could only hold on. If Tianfan Laozu also retreated into the island's protective formation, the destructive power of an unrestrained Jade Shura was not something that Tianfan and Tian Shui Laozu could defend even if they retreated into the protective formation. After all, the protective formation was just an inanimate object. However, Tian Shui Laozu did not dare to leave the protective formation. Tiancheng Laozu was heavily injured, Tian Shu Laozu was not strong enough, and Tianshan Laozu had exhausted too much energy. Lu Ping had just received an attack that had shaken the entire Jinling. At this moment, Tian Shui Laozu was like Jinling's stabilizing force. If she left, when the demonic cultivators used their soul-devouring powers for the second time, Jinling would collapse. Buzz. A formless fluctuation could be felt once again. The hundreds of demonic cultivators relied on the Dao soldier formation to activate their soul-devouring powers. With a thought, the small banner that Lu Ping had refined appeared in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping poured his Zhen Yuan into the small banner without any regard for his life. The small banner that was originally the size of a palm immediately expanded to the size of 3 feet. Lu Ping grabbed the small banner in his hand and waved it with all his might. On the surface of the small banner, white clouds appeared. Layers upon layers of clouds appeared. The misty clouds covered a third of the protective formation that Jinling was in. Following that, the strange fluctuation of the soul-devouring powers arrived one after another. The clouds were suddenly compressed to a fourth of their original size. After that, they slowly returned to their original size. As for the cultivators that were covered by the clouds, most of them were safe and sound. Only the cultivators that were at the edge of the clouds were protected by the soul-devouring powers. Under the protection of the protective formation and their own bodies, only a few of them were injured. However, in the areas where the clouds were not covered by the small banner, Jinling suffered heavy casualties. 40 to 50 blood condensation realm cultivators had fallen, and 4 core forging realm cultivators had fallen. Coincidentally, these 4 cultivators were the ones whose divine sense had been damaged by the soul-devouring powers. Even so, everyone in Jinling was still cheering. Tian Shui Laozu had long discovered the abnormality. She could no longer be bothered to help Xian Chun defend the protective formation. She directly tore through space and appeared beside Lu Ping. The joy in her eyes was so bright that it could even hurt Lu Ping's eyes. Hang the cloud sail? Tian Shuelaozu looked at the small banner in Lu Ping's hand. It had already returned to the size of a palm and was being dyed a bluish-purple color by Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan. She asked straightforwardly. After the small banner was attacked by the soul-devouring powers for the second time, the runes on the small banner had already covered more than half of the banner. Lu Ping was currently refining these runes with all his might. After blocking the second attack from the demonic cultivator Dao Soldier, how could Lu Ping be careless with this small banner? This small banner might have already become the key treasure for the cultivators on Frost Island to last until the reinforcements arrived. While Lu Ping was refining it with all his might, he was unwilling to be distracted by speaking. He could only give Tian Shuelaozu an unclear look. Tian Shuelaozu naturally understood that they were in a race against time. She did not disturb Lu Ping from refining the small banner. She took a step back and disappeared. Once again, she returned to the center of the protective formation to help Xian Chun repair the protective formation. This time, Jinling's casualties had been reduced by half. The cultivators who were gathered above the spirit mine in the center of Frost Island could naturally see it clearly. Many of the cultivators were quick-witted and had already linked Lu Ping's small banner to the cloud sail. This was especially so for the cultivators of Blue Sea Sect. First, they saw Lu Ping using the thin water-flowing sword to fight against Blood Azura. Now, they saw Lao Zu's cloud sail. All of them looked at Lu Ping like hungry wolves. They wanted to skin him alive. Compared to Zhenling, the casualties of the cultivators of the various sects made the Dharma idol Lao Zu feel sad. After the second attack of the soul-devouring powers, even though the cultivators of the various sects worked together to resist it, this time, not only did hundreds of blood condensation cultivators die, more than 30 core forging cultivators also died. This time, it was really a serious blow. Originally, the combined strength of the various sects far surpassed Jinling. Even if Jinling had Lu Ping's miraculous small banner, the casualties of the various sects were only about the same as Jinling's. However, one should not forget that Jinling's sect's foundation was much deeper than that of the other sections. Over the past 100 years, the number of core forging cultivators in Jinling's sect had more than doubled. Although it was painful to lose 7 or 8 of them at once, even if Daoist Xuanyu was a disciple who was equivalent to a direct disciple, it was not a big deal. However, the various sects were different. For example, Linggu sect, Soaring Feather sect, and Chongming sect. Although they were also considered large sects, the number of core forging stage cultivators in their entire sect was no more than 30 to 50 people. Losing 3 to 5 of them at once was practically equivalent to losing a tenth of their foundation. Even the other sects, such as Haiyin sect, Shuiyin Pavilion, Xianling sect, and Blue Sea sect, which had much stronger foundations, losing these cultivators was not just painful, it was like carving out their flesh. As they spoke, the great cultivation formation's soul-devouring divine art had already been used for the third time. The 2 great island protection formations on Frost Island had shrunk once again. Jinling's great protection formation had even shrunk to half of its original size. However, facing this attack that was stronger than the last, the various sects Lao Zu all felt anxious. However, before that strange soul-devouring divine art could descend on Jinling's great protection formation, they saw a 3-meter-long banner slowly rise from the top of Jinling's defensive area. More than half of the banner's surface flowed with mysterious runes and once again transformed into layers of clouds. The misty cloud light actually covered the entire island protection formation after it had shrunk. The various sects cultivators at the center of Frost Island once again suffered heavy casualties. However, this time, Jinling was safe and sound. However, after this small banner was attacked by the Great Cultivation Formation for the third time, the runes that had originally covered more than half of the banner's surface suddenly quickly extended again. The entire banner abruptly lit up. At the same time, a distant bell suddenly rang from the back of the Great Cultivation Formation. Clang! The entire Great Cultivation Formation instantly fell into chaos and collapsed. Lu Ping naturally knew that Ling Long was referring to the artifact spirit hidden in the small banner. Naturally, Lu Ping was very happy. Lu Ping knew that the artifact spirit was referring to the spirit hidden in the small banner. By Ling Long, vast sea vast spirit was. The bluish-purple true essence was mixed with traces of flickering lightning. In an instant, it traced the pure yang energy that was dissipating from the small flag. If it was in the past, although Lu Ping was eager to refine the small flag, he would not pour his quintessential essence into the magic treasure like this. This could easily cause damage to the body of the magic treasure. But now that he had confirmed that this small streamer was a spirit treasure, Lu Ping seemed somewhat unscrupulous. Even the violent destructive power of the thunder tribulation water in his Zhen Yuan was no longer restrained. The material of a spirit treasure was more than enough to withstand Lu Ping's violent Zhen Yuan. In an extremely secretive place within the small flag, a golden cloud was changing into various shapes, like a person who was about to wake up rolling on the bed. Faint pure yang energy radiated from the cloud, attracting a rich bluish-purple aura from afar. Lu Ping's quintessential essence followed the flashing pure yang energy in the little flag and charged forward. Finally, he found the golden auspicious cloud and rushed toward it like a flood that broke a dam. On the surface of the small flag, the mysterious runes that originally covered the entire surface of the flag were like tadpoles that had their nest blown up. They wandered around the surface of the flag, gathering and dispersing at times. If a cultivator were to probe the flag with their spiritual sense at this moment, they would immediately be confused by the wandering runes. At this moment, a second bell toll sounded in the distant sea, but this time, the sound came from the rear of the Great Devil Cultivation Formation. This time, the casualties in the Great Devil Cultivation Formation were even more severe, including the dozens of demonic cultivators that had their black mist dissipated. 70 to 80 demonic cultivators fell from midair. In addition, 20 to 30 demonic cultivators had their black mist dissipated. The entire Great Devil Cultivation Formation fell into chaos again. Although the 4 blood demons tried their best to restrain the sea bell and joined forces to resist the effects of the sea bell, they still couldn't offset the effects of the sea bell's special bell. However, before the sea bell finished ringing, a golden light suddenly cut through the sky and illuminated Xiang Lu Laozu, who was holding a huge bronze bell and was about to flee in a panic. A golden-clothed Shura with a golden face suddenly appeared behind the Great Devil Cultivation Formation. After taking a step forward, a golden light shot out from his hand, but this time, it hit the west side, which was hundreds of meters away. A second Jade Shura. There was a second Jade Shura near Frost Island. Xiang Lu Laozu must have arrived near Frost Island a long time ago, but he was blocked by this Jade Shura. Xiang Lu Laozu, who was a lone practitioner, didn't have many tricks up his sleeve other than the sea bell that he had obtained by chance. Fortunately, he was at the mid-Dharma stage. Although he was far from being a match for the Jade Shura, who was at the Dharma stage, the Jade Shura was still wary of the sea bell. The two of them circled around Frost Island like hide-and-seek. Knowing that Frost Island was in danger, Xiang Lu Laozu took the risk of being killed by the Jade Shura to ring the sea bell. Speaking of which, Elder Xiang Lu was feeling rather helpless. This sea bell was like a hot potato in his hands, but if he wanted to throw it away, he would have to think about the fact that he only had one top-notch spirit-nurturing treasure that had lost all hope of becoming a spirit treasure. Even in a barren land like the North Sea, as a mid-Dharma adept, he was still the poorest of the poorest. No matter what, he could not bear to throw away this spirit treasure that he had already obtained. However, under the heavy pressure of the various sects, Forefather Xiang Lu, a mighty mid-Dharma adept, actually did not dare to show his face in the North Sea cultivation world during this period of time. No matter how he thought about it, he could only risk his life to participate in the Battle of Frost Island. Only then would he be able to make the various sects and forces of the North Sea admit that the vast ocean bell was his. And when the sea bell rang a second time, the mysterious runes on the small flag suddenly began to gather at the top of the flag like ants on a hot pan. Then, they connected with each other, and a big hang word appeared on the flag. And at this time, in the hidden place of the small flag, The golden clouds had already transformed into a golden-winged pung bird that was about to take flight. But at this time, this pung bird couldn't fly at all, because dozens of flashing blue and purple water ropes had already tightly bound the golden pung bird's wings and feet. Outside Frost Island, Xiang Lu Laozu had dodged the 3 attacks of the metal element Jade Shura. He no longer had the aura of a Dharma adept. He shook the sea bell in his hand, and when the 3rd bell rang, dozens of demonic cultivators died in the demonic cultivation formation. The formation couldn't hold on any longer, and finally collapsed. From afar, Xiang Lu Laozu's roar could be heard. Friends from all sects, I can't hold on any longer. At most, I can lure this Jade Shura away. Take care. Then, Xiang Lu Laozu's figure flashed, and he used his space god art. The 2 Blood Shura that wanted to take the opportunity to attack the island's protective formation had no choice but to retreat and avoid the 2 Laozu's frontal attacks. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.